facilities, including indoor and outdoor pools, a comprehensive group fitness timetable, and learn to swim programs for babies through to adults. You can swim all year round with our perfectly heated pools. For further information, visit www.stirling.wa.gov.au/recreation or subscribe to us.
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions, to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name.
Amen. And Councillor Ree, I believe you might have the acknowledgement of country there, I hope. No, sorry, Councillor Hatton, is it? Apologies. Councillor Hatton, if you could please read the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, on which this meeting is taking place, and show our respect for elders past and emerging, present and emerging.
Thank you. You can take your seats, please. Please note that without prior approval, any recording of this meeting is prohibited, and members of the public should note that no action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the city being received. Now that takes us to item 1, which is the official opening. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the council meeting the 14th of September 2021 open at 7:01 p.m. 2, I have apologies from Councillor Spagnolo. 3, approve leave of absence. I have nil. Item 4, disclosure of interest. All the disclosures that were from the Planning and Development Committee can be found in the agenda of tonight's meeting and as displayed on the screen behind me. For the council meeting, we have Councillor Elizabeth Reid disclosing an impartial interest in item 13.1 as she is a JDAP member, and Councillor Susan Migdale disclosing an impartial interest in item 13.1 as the item is coming to JDAP and she sits on JDAP. Councillors, are there any other disclosures of interest? Yeah, Councillor Sandri.
Sorry, just to clarify, and I ask this every week because the JDAP, have I been appointed yet?
Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, through you, Chair. There has been no appointment that's been advised to the city.
No other disclosures? Councillor Hatton.
Yes, Mayor, I might disclose item 14.1, motion put in by myself because I'm actually, I live nearby the park.
Sure. And if you can make sure they do the paperwork.
Yep.
No other indications, councillors? Councillor Farrell.
Mr Mayor, also 13.1 impartial. I am not going to be on the JDAP, but I am a JDAP member for that one.
Thank you. That brings us to item 5, which is petitions. One petition has been received from the City. Councillor Reid, would you like to read out the verified petition, please?
Thank you. It's 149 verified signatures. We, the undersigned, do respectfully request that the Council refuse the development to the Wembley Downs Community and Childcare Centre, as we object for the following reasons. The consultation period was very short and most were not informed. Under the Local Planning Scheme Regulations 2015, in determining planning applications, local governments must consider community views, setbacks, access, egress, visual amenity, privacy, streetscape, pedestrian, car safety and other significant noise issues are already compromised. Corners of Hale Road and Unwin Avenue are dangerous and congested due to double parking, school drop-offs, pickups, lack of parking. This leads to many people parking on the road, including large, noisy service trucks at all hours, overshadowing to closest residents affecting solar panels and lifestyle, plot ratio of large buildings being approximately 400 square metres too big. The residential area streetscape character and design WA planning scheme outcomes have not been met. State Planning Policy 7.3 Volume 2. Traffic on Hale Road is a main distributor road for 6 schools and is a truck route and is already dangerous and congested, and there are many accidents and blind corners at Unwin and Hale Road. I so present. Also, Mr Mayor, I have been given 86 signatures. To the Mayor and the Council of the City of Stirling.
Just to clarify, this is a separate petition now? Yes, yeah, thanks. Sorry, your microphone again. Thanks.
This is another petition with regard to the Childcare Centre in Wembley Downs to refuse the development with regard to consultation, setbacks, site coverage, building height, overshadowing, traffic, parking bays, cumulative impacts, and that this will result in exacerbating existing issues as well as creating new issues within the residential area. Residents in this residential area will have these unwelcome issues thrust upon them. And does the City of Stirling expect us to take on their responsibility of accommodating setbacks, access, egress, visual amenity, privacy, streetscape, pedestrian roads and car safety and significant noise? And not quite sure, but there is 10, 35, 39, 46, and about 80 of those, which is slightly different from the other Wembley Downs petition. Okay? And then a completely different petition is keeping the original Churchlands Green traffic management system, and there are 86 signatures. We, the undersigned, do respectfully request that the Council return the traffic management system to the original plan for the following reasons. The trials have been initiated by a small number of residents who do not represent the views of all. The trials have been expensive, have gone on for several months, post-agreed timeframes, and have simply moved traffic from one area to another. The trials have created safety issues, especially around Churchlands Primary School, which is the corner of Pearson Street and Comrati, which may make the city liable in this intersection should they choose to permanently divert traffic to this location. The closures impact emergency vehicles access. Many residents have not been consulted and would like to be prior to making any permanent changes. And I so put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ree. And Councillor Sandri, you've got unverified as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an unverified petition by 40 or so signatories. It's in relation to the Terry Aquatic Centre to urgently and seriously consider the following requests, and I'll keep it very brief: to provide steps into the 50-metre pool and to ensure the centre can continue to offer much needed exercise for those people who are not able to safely enter the pool with the use of ladders, and to provide aqua aerobic classes between 10 a.m. and 10:55 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, given the large number of people who attend these classes. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other petitions? No. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Proud, seconder Councillor Farrelly. If we can just go to the vote, please, councillors. And that is unanimous. Thank you. All right. Item 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice. All public question time responses from that previous council meeting were published in the minutes of that meeting. Item 7 now, public question time. I'll ask that we have a mover for the following motion: that in accordance with the City of Stirling's meeting procedures, Local Law 2009, public question time be extended for up to 45 minutes to respond to questions from members of the public who have registered. If I could have a mover and a seconder for that. Move Councillor Migdale, seconder Councillor Perkoff. You can vote on that, please. Just a show of hands, councillors. Thanks. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Now, we have got a significant amount. There's obviously some interest with specifically item 13.1, the childcare. If I could ask, some of these questions that have been submitted are extremely long and we have got a lot to get through. So I would ask that if you can abbreviate them, and if they go on too long, I will ask you just to get to a question. But we'll start off and see how we go. Various clematis, please. Question 1 was a good example, sir, if you could shorten that a bit. Just your name and suburb, thanks. And just your microphone, just on the bottom. Sorry, just the bottom. Yeah, that's it.
All good. Varus Clematis from Wembley Downs. I note that the council has provided its RADA, the JDAP, for the development and has recommended it be approved. A recommendation was provided even though the specific policy with respect to childcare premises, LPP 6.4, expressly states that it applies to all childcare premises developments, and the proposed development was not in an area approved by the policy, specifically a corridor class 1, 2 or 3 road, not within 100 metres of an activity centre. Further, the very first main objective of that policy is to promote the establishment of childcare premises in proximity to activity centres and along corridors. Shortening my question a little bit, I understand that the Council is not bound by any policy statements when making development decisions. However, the Town Planning Scheme 3 also states that Council is to have due regard to the provisions of the policy and the objectives which the policy is designed to achieve before making its determination. I further understand that the Council is not the decision maker in this case. However, the Council's RAR is absolutely a hugely influential document in the decision-making process, and so I would appreciate not receiving a simple answer of we aren't the decision makers here. My question is then, given the facts outlined above, specifically the clear and unequivocal policy to not have childcare premises in residential zones that don't meet the policy, how can the Council be satisfied that they have truly given due regard to that policy?
Okay. Mr Henderson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, through you, and thank you, Mr Clemitis, for the question. Thank you. Is that going? Thank you for the question. The officers have written a comprehensive assessment of the report. They have had regard to the policy in making their recommendation, and it's on the. It's been called in by council, who will consider that and consider the council's recommendation to the JDAP this evening.
Given that, sorry, am I still on? Yep. Given that one of the stated values of the Council is to be transparent, how is the Council able to determine that the clear and specific location criteria of the childcare premises policy should be set aside in favour of the vague, subjective objectives of the Town Planning Scheme number 3? In this case, specifically the objective to provide for a range of non-residential uses which are compatible and complementary to residential development.
Thank you. Mr Henderson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you again, thank you for that question. The report is on the agenda. It explains how and why the decision has been made against all of the planning framework, and it is a completely open and transparent process, noting it's on the agenda tonight for Council's consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, my final question. Given that the Town Planning Scheme 3 states that the local planning policy is not part of the scheme and does not bind the Council in respect of any application for planning approval, does the Council agree that in practice virtually any commercial development could be approved based on the vague, subjective TPS 3 objective that residential zones provide for a range of non-residential uses which are compatible and complementary to residential development?
Thank you. Mr Henderson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and again, thank you for the question. The Western Australian planning system is a system that is largely based on discretion and applying discretion. The planning documents give guidance for decisions, and applications are considered on their merits by the officers who write their report and make a recommendation. Again, I'd note that that is items on the agenda tonight for Council's consideration, and they will consider that and make a recommendation to the JDAP.
Thank you, sir. Caroline Pay, please. Just your name and suburb, thanks.
My name is Caroline Pay and I live in Wembley Downs. The policy manual for childcare premises has an objective to minimise the adverse impacts of the bulk and scale of childcare premises on neighbouring properties and the streetscape, and that buildings are consistent with the built form of an area, including future character. How do you propose to fulfil this objective when the plans that have been provided are offensive, ugly, and have no consistency with the surrounding properties?
Thank you. Mr Henderson?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you again for the question, Ms Pay. The city's RAR covers this matter, but the built form of the development is consistent with the development standards of the residential zone and the residential 20 zone of the coding. And the report again is on the agenda tonight and will be considered by the Council. Thank you.
Question 2, thanks.
The policy for childcare premises also states that noise-generating activities such as outdoor play areas, vehicle access ways, car parking areas and any plant and equipment use will be located away from noise-sensitive land uses such as residential dwelling. How will this be achieved in a high-density residential area?
Thank you. Mr Henderson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As per this matter is again covered in the RAR. The play areas are located away from the southern and eastern residential boundaries and are buffered by acoustic fencing and are proposed to be buffered by acoustic fencing and walls. The application included an environmental acoustic assessment. It's been reviewed by the city and determined that it complies with the environmental protection noise regulations. The city has also proposed a condition in the RAR relating to noise mitigation and operational matters to further address that.
Thank you. And question 3.
Again, I quote from the Policy Manual of Childcare Premises that childcare premises on corner sites shall be designed to address the street with the least impact on surrounding residential properties. Assessment of these applications will place strong emphasis on the effect of traffic and parking. How will this be achieved in a street that is not designed for on-road parking and is close to an already dangerous and busy junction used by pedestrians and motorists alike? The parking spaces provided by the centre will not be enough for the number of children attending the centre, plus the number of staff, including carers, administrators, caterers, cleaners and maintenance. Please provide a plan for increased parking that meets the requirements laid out in the Policy Manual.
Thank you. Mr Henderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Ms Pay, look, that matter again is covered in the city's RAR. The development provides for the number of parking bays required in accordance with the city's local planning policy 6.7, parking and access.
Thank you. Catherine Rowlands, please. Thank you. Just your name and suburb.
Catherine Rowlands, Wembley Downs. So my first question is around best practice for development planning, which is, my understanding of it is to co-locate services that are complementary, such as childcare and, from the perspective of a working mother, supermarkets. Since this development is in the middle of an established residential area with no other complementary services nearby, how can this be considered good planning versus locating the centre at an existing commercial site, such as the Ocean Village Shopping Centre, which is sitting empty at this point in time?
Thank you for that question. Look, as per the city's RR, the proposed development is located opposite an educational establishment with Hale School located directly north of the subject site, but that matter is for consideration by council this evening.
Second question, residents are clearly against the proposed childcare centre being located on Unwin Avenue. How do planners justify this overriding of community desires, especially since local community is the target customer base for the centre?
Thank you. Mr Henderson.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. The outcomes of the public consultation are included in the council's report. What happens is that the officers assess the public consultation in terms of the planning matters that are raised and then address those planning matters, and that's what has happened in this case.
Question 3, please.
Third question. The intersection of Unwin and Hale Road is a well-known traffic black spot, both for cars entering Hale Road from Unwin in both directions, as well as cars travelling along Hale Road. School crossing wardens are only in attendance from 7:30 to 9 and 2:30 to 4 p.m, which is not adequate to support the increased number of drop-offs and pickups at a childcare centre, which runs from earlier in the day until later. Since childcare centres are also not approved stakeholders for the decision-making about school crossings, how does the City of Stirling justify overriding safety concerns about increased traffic without having any new mechanisms in place to manage the traffic?
Mr Henderson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, and thank you for the question. Look, the application provides a transport impact statement, and the city officers assess that statement, and the comments and their findings have been reflected in the RAR report, and clearly they're satisfied with what the applicant is proposing can be managed and implemented without causing any safety issues.
Thank you.
Amanda Johnson, please. Just your name and suburb, please.
Amanda Johnson, Unwin Avenue, directly across the road from the proposed site. My question is again, is any consideration gone into the traffic management and the safety of children and residents coming off a very busy road on an already dangerous corner on Hale Road? Has any considerations for your accountability to an accident when this occurs?
Mr Henderson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, that's the traffic impact assessment covers all of those aspects, and clearly those matters are being documented in the officer's assessment in the RAR.
Okay. As a taxpayer in Wembley Downs, can you please explain how this commercial property is consistent with the character of the locality?
Mr Henderson.
Again, the RAR covers the character and impact of the building on the local neighbourhood, so yeah, it's detailed in that document.
Okay. Has any consideration gone into the fact that the owners of the properties who already pay rates and the massive loss of value to their properties and the surrounding properties?
No, so property values are not a planning consideration that are taken into account.
Okay, it's a consideration for us, so thank you.
Michelle Cook. Just your name and suburb, please.
Good evening, Council. Michelle Cook from Wembley Downs, Unwin Avenue. The RAR does not accurately reflect the negative impact on the amenity for nearby residents. The RAR, the City of Stirling officers, the town planners and the developers could be more genuine, realistic and credible in acknowledging that the scale and nature of this development is not in keeping with the surrounding properties. It is a 2-storey and over 1,500 square metres with a huge car park. Beyond reasonable doubt, the centre impacts negatively on the amenity. Will the City of Stirling office amend the report, or will the Council refuse the biased report and go for further public consultation when neighbours haven't had the right of reply to the planner's amendments?
Thank you. And the City of Stirling officers RAR has already been submitted. Council will consider that this evening.
Yes, thank you for that. Noted. Point 2. Why has the City of Stirling officers not applied the same rules of amenity, decision-making and due diligence to the childcare centre proposal in Wembley Downs, as it did recently to another development that's proposed in Wembley Downs in a residential zone? And I refer to Lot 8, 139 Weaponess Road, Wembley Downs. Extension of non-conforming use, consulting rooms in a residential area. The childcare centre does not achieve any of the positive amenity principles stated by the City of Stirling officers in that case, and in fact will negatively impact the amenity for neighbouring residents, and the RAR omits this. So let me quote, amenity was noted in that case as being improved by a high quality single storey design, one that is appropriate scale and contributed positively to the amenity of the existing streetscape. It did not intensify the use. It directed traffic to and from the site, and that would be limited, and public parking would be dispersed to a nearby activity centre where there's a shopping centre. Parking bays would be removed from the front. The RAR doesn't include that.
Thank you. And obviously both of those items are on the agenda this evening. I think it's worth noting, whilst your point is taken and Council will take that under consideration, they are two very different applications, and the amenity of that development and the lack of the intensity of it was very significant to what that development was, or what's being considered tonight.
I note your point, Mayor, and I reject that statement.
You can reject that is the answer. Clinton Johnson, please.
Clinton Johnson, Unwin Ave, Wembley Downs. I'd like to know or can someone explain to me how clearly a commercial property, being of 2-storey in proposal, is being built in a clearly built-up residential area?
Thank you. Mr Henderson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, Mr Johnson, thanks for your question. The RAR details the consideration. Just to note that the building's 2 storeys in height and has a concealed roof, or it's proposed to have a concealed style roof containing some architectural features, and that's consistent with what you could build on or on the surrounding properties.
So to follow up on that, is the block of land that we're talking about a residential zoned property or a commercial zoned property?
Thank you. Mr Henderson?
Oh yes, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it's a residential zone property. The city's planning scheme, however, does contemplate that childcare centres can be located on residential zones.
My last one. The proposal that is to be built, and I understand what's being told to me, I'm just trying to get my words right here in a minute.
Sure.
Is no more, hang on. So basically what I'm asking you is, if the proposal that it's being built, and you're saying that it's okay and it's 2-storey and it's going to have all this supposedly acoustic lagging and all that sort of stuff that you've been conversing with us tonight, how do we believe that in regards to if it is successful, and if they don't follow that, what is the outcome of non-compliance, non-construction, and also the fact that many of these, and I'm saying it now, NIDO centres emit noise from their 2-storey when kids play, and I'll declare my hand, I've been involved in building them, and they are clearly not in a residential area, the ones that I've done. They are in a commercial property, i.e. next to a down shopping centre or in a commercial space.
Sure. Mr Henderson, are you able to provide some comment?
If this application is approved by the JDAP, we'll have a number of conditions which will need to be complied with. There are also other legislation dealing with matters such as noise, and if those the activity doesn't comply with any of those, then the city can enforce that through its enforcement proceedings that it would undertake.
Oh, thank you very much.
Penny Brown?
Penny Brown, Wembley Downs. Can you please confirm what the council bylaws and guidelines in regards to community consultation in regards to how this commercial redevelopment public notice of intent to develop was conducted? For example, how much notice was given to the residents in the immediate area affected by the proposed commercial redevelopment, and what is physically distance for the residents to be considered notifiable? How has this been complied with?
Thank you. Mr Henderson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. The development is advertised in accordance with the Planning and Development Local Planning Scheme Regulations 2015. It included a 14-day requirement, but the applicant agreed to extend that for a further 7 days, and so it was 21 days. It was further than had to be done. Letters to the owners were written to the owners in the immediate facility.
Well, I can tell you...
Excuse me,
a notice has been placed on the city's website, website, and copies of the development application were available for viewing at the city's administration.
Did that notification include letters out to the residents in the immediate vicinity, as I'm at 150, which is directly across the road diagonally from the proposed intersection? I found out about this second hand. So therefore there was no consultation to some of the immediate areas because people did not receive notification from the proposal.
Mr. Henderson, how far was the immediate area?
I'll just Shears, if she got that. Is it 200 metres or the adjoining properties?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to answer your question, it was the surrounding neighbours, so it wasn't the 200-metre radius. The regulations that came in February this year effectively put on pause the policy that the city had in relation to that 200-metre radius. So we were required to comply with the regulation, which was affected neighbours immediately adjoining and opposite.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, do you have a final question?
I do have more in regards to that.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse me. I'll ask you please to remain seated and respect the questions and respect the answers, please.
Okay. Notification in regards to consultation. Previously, the council used to put up notices of intent at the premises too. That certainly did not happen. So therefore, how could they be compliant with the intent to redevelop the site? After all, it is an industrial scale childcare centre in a residential area.
Ms. Shears?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, you're correct. So the city used to do that. As I mentioned, the regulations changed earlier in the year, which meant the city wasn't able to do that. There are certain things we have some flexibility in. Unfortunately, the placement of signs isn't one of those aspects. So the regulations remove that requirement.
So therefore, people would not notice.
Excuse me. It's not for debate. You're allowed to ask 3 questions. You've asked those. We have got a long list. Happy to take your name down and governance can get hold of you and we can answer any other questions you have after. Eva, sorry, I'm not sure of the surname here. Is it Eva Shang?
My name is Eva Shang. I live in Wen Avenue, Wembley Downs. I'm the resident immediately in front of the proposed daycare centre. The RAR does not generally nor fairly portray reduction of amenity to residents and my property. So my first question is, City of Stirling Council has recommended the project to go ahead before the meeting tonight with so many objections from the residents. And how can we know councillors do not have interest conflicts with the projects?
Okay, so there's a couple of different things in there and they're very different. The first part is council hasn't made any recommendations yet. The City of Stirling officers have submitted a responsible authority report to JDAP, who are the decision makers here.
Then why you go ahead?
Excuse me. Nothing is going ahead at the moment.
Then why you recommend?
No, excuse me. Nothing is going ahead at the moment. The city officers have submitted a report to JDAP. JDAP have not made a determination. Council is trying to determine it tonight and they're trying to listen to community concerns. If a council has a conflict with this project, they will put a declaration in. That's how we know. Your next question, thank you.
Okay, my second question is, what did City of Stirling Council do to act its duty to benefit and take care of its residents when over 149 objections received from e-petition regards to the project but still recommended the project to go ahead? Did Council do its job?
Council hasn't determined anything yet. The city officers have certainly done their job and provided a responsible authority report based on planning grounds, taking on board the comments from the community during that period as well. Your third question, please.
If residents in City of Stirling doubt Council did not act its duty to benefit local people, where can we appeal and who should we approach? States Council?
No, so
can you please give an answer, please?
Yeah, sure. So there are no third-party appeal rights in Western Australia, but I would suggest that those interested parties attend JDAP on Friday, where JDAP is the decision maker in this particular development.
Thank you, definitely will.
Holly Johnson, please. Is there a Holly Johnson here? So if someone has submitted questions and they don't attend council, those will form part of the minutes, so they'll still be published with the written answers. Ruby Chen?
Sorry, it's me again. I'm talking on behalf of Ruby Chen. She lives in 25 Anwen Avenue, Wembley Downs, and she's the resident of Wembley Downs. So the first question is, with current terrible traffic condition in the area, residents already affect badly and doubt our safety. Please explain the consideration study method of the traffic control of proposal area and how would the area have the capability to build and operate a daycare center, have such number of children and staff.
Mr Henderson?
That's through you, Mr Mayor. I think there's been a number of questions tonight along these lines. The city has, the applicant has submitted a traffic assessment. The city has reviewed that, and that is all contained in the RAR report, which the council will be considering tonight. Thank you.
Second question, please provide independent authority names who reviewed the actual traffic issues against the proposal.
Did you get that question? Did you get that question?
No, sorry. So I called up Ruby Chen, yes?
Yeah.
And you're reading her questions?
Yes.
So they're not the questions that Ruby Chen has submitted?
Oh, okay, sorry, maybe crossed. I need to talk on behalf of two people, sorry.
No,
Do you
I'm
mind
sorry.
to answer the question?
Look, I'm sorry. So what we can do, I'm happy to take all of your questions and make sure these other 2 pages, but there's 2 more pages of questions that all come from your email address with another name.
Yeah,
And
because I'm talking on behalf of 2 people. So 3 people in the area, City of Stirling
Okay,
residents.
so I can't allow that, but what I can ensure is that all those questions and answers are placed in the minutes of the agenda.
Okay, then can I go ahead or you
No, I think they can.
questions?
Reading the questions here, they've been answered previously. They're the same as the answers that have previously gone.
Sorry, excuse me. I don't have any answer previously, and I don't even
So I'm
have
sorry,
the
it's not up.
notification
I'm
for
sorry,
the
it's
first
not up for
meeting.
debate. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, but
I'm not debate. I'm just
sorry.
clarifying.
Please take your seat.
So no question.
No, you've asked your 3 questions,
Okay.
and the other ones will form part. Chrissia Griffin.
You've heard the local residents speak tonight.
Sorry, I just need your name and suburb to start.
Carisha Griffin from Wembley Downs. You've heard the local residents speak tonight, and in the main, they reject the statements of Mr Henderson, who is the manager of city planning and has a vested interest.
I'm sorry, please direct your questions through me.
Sure.
And this isn't about individual officers.
Sure. My first question, pivotal traffic facts and facts from residents were sanitised out of the RAR and traffic report. On public record is other law-breaking compliance issues with respect to the current owner applicant. Can the RAR and the traffic report be withdrawn?
Mr Henderson?
Look, through the chair, and thank you for the question, but just say that's simply not correct. Attachment 14 of the city's RAR contains the public consultation submissions as received by the city. Sensitive personal information such as addresses and have been redacted for privacy purposes.
Mr Henderson,
I'm sorry, Miss Griffin, please. You don't get to do that. You're allowed to ask a question and we ask you respectfully listen. Would you like to hear the rest of Mr Henderson's response? Okay, there you go. Question 2.
I respectfully comment that pertinent facts
you may
were
not.
sanitised
You may not.
out.
Miss Griffin, I won't warn you again. Question 2, please.
Can a matrix of building developments indicating the number of approvals and rejections over the last 3 years and indicating how each individual councillor has voted in each instance be provided?
Sure, so, yeah, All the JDAP decisions and development applications are all published on our website for you to see.
We would like a complete matrix of the building approvals over the last 3 years, whether they were approved or denied, and how each individual councillor voted in that process, whether in the affirmative or in the negative.
Thank you. Happy to send you the link to the website.
No,
Your third question.
that wasn't the question.
Your
That
third
wasn't
question,
what-
please.
You're
Your
not
third
answering
question,
my
please.
question.
Your third question, please.
You're not answering my question. Why has the council shown no concern and accepts reports that are fraudulent by omission with respect to the facts of which the blind corner and the truck route on which the proposed daycare centre seeks to reside? This is negligent. You cannot limit your liability with respect to that, even if you wish to rely on the fictitious RAR and whatever statute you think you're limited to, but you're not. I refer to the case of Sophie Delasio. Has anyone had a look at that and what happened there when a daycare centre was put on a major route?
Thank you.
It's unacceptable.
I'll take that as a
the
comment and I
community
reject your statement.
rejects your RAR.
Xiao Kun Cheng, please. Mark Harding.
My name's Tonya Pajoli. I'm from Unwin Avenue, Wembley Downs, and I'm speaking on behalf of Lanju Chan.
I'm sorry, I haven't called. I've called Mark Harding up.
Sorry? No, you didn't.
Is it?
You said...
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, so Tonya Pajoli, you've got three questions.
No, I'm speaking on behalf of... We have got non-English speaking residents on our street, and that's what Eva was trying to express to you earlier. So her parents who live at her address also submitted questions, and as they don't have an email address, she had to submit on their behalf.
Okay, so I'll allow these ones if you'd like to read these ones out. But it really isn't normal, and there's a reason for this process. We could obviously sit here all night with someone submitting 10 names. There's no fact checking on them. So I'm happy.
Yeah, they're actually here.
Okay.
They're actually here.
It would have been nice to know that. Ms. Pajoli.
You didn't really give Eva an opportunity to explain that.
Ms. Pajoli, would you like to continue?
With current terrible traffic conditions in the area, residents already are affected badly, and we doubt our safety. Please explain the consideration or the study for the method of the traffic control for the proposal, and how would the area have the capacity to build or operate a childcare centre with such a large number of children and staff?
Thank you. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The applicants has submitted a traffic impact assessment, and that will contain how the methodology and what was undertaken in order to assess the impacts of that traffic. That has been reviewed by the city's engineers, and the assessment is contained in the RAR.
So,
your second question, please.
Can I respond?
No.
So what's the purpose of this process then?
It's to ask questions.
And we're not allowed to respond?
No. No, councillors will debate the item. You may ask questions.
Please provide independent authority, the name and officer's name who reviewed the actual traffic issues against the proposal.
So the city's engineering service business unit reviewed the traffic considerations for this application.
Well, I'd like to think that they...
Do you mind to send details if that's transparent?
Yes, we'll provide you a full response in writing.
Thank you.
With the current road conditions and residents' age group with little children, older senior citizens, please provide us with a detailed plan which would ensure our safety.
I'm not sure if I understand that question.
Well, what's your plan for our safety?
So the traffic impact study and the other answers that you've previously been given has been completely reviewed by the City Engineering Business Service Unit and City Planning, and the Responsible Authority report has gone to JDAP with any considerations and conditions, and Council will make a consideration this evening. Now, while you're there, Ms Pajoli, would you like to ask your questions?
Well, I've got mine back at the seat. And on behalf of the previous questions, we reject the answers.
I'm sorry.
Okay, right.
You don't get to. No, I'm sorry.
Well, you don't.
No, I'm sorry, Ms Pajoli.
Opinion.
No, you don't get to reject anything. You've asked for questions. Please be respectful enough to listen to the answers. You're not a councillor. You're not debating this item tonight.
Well, respectfully.
No. You may ask a question, please. Your name and suburb and a question.
My name is Tonya Pajoli. I'm from Unwin Avenue, Wembley Downs. For councillors, as outlined in the local planning scheme number 3, to do due diligence as per their liability, accountability, responsibility, and pledge for and to their ratepayers, this instance being the many affected residents, they need time to prepare for this decision. Please provide clarity of when councillors received the RAR, received the proposal, and what time frame did they have to prepare for this decision tonight and for JDAP?
Thank you. So councillors received their agenda on Friday afternoon.
My question is regarding adequate time to make an informed decision.
So councillors receive all their agendas on Friday afternoon for all meetings.
The City of Stirling is aware of the excessive parking issues on Unwin Avenue as expressed to me by City of Stirling Rangers over the years, and of which they have stated that they cannot solve. They are also aware, due to the many emails, photos submitted, phone calls, personal visits by, and as already stated, by numerous discussions with the Rangers in my home, on the verge. In order for this to be a fair and just process for the affected residents and community, consultation with the Rangers and reference to their data has not been accessed or utilised in this RAR report. As such, due to the invalid process, lack of access and accurate data of the RAR, I state that this report is rendered invalid and unreliable. And therefore, I ask the City of Stirling councillors and office to retract and amend the report in all forms of its transmission for fairness, natural justice and accountability.
Thank you. So the item is on the agenda this evening and council will make a consideration of that. Laura McFadgen, please.
I've got one more question.
Apologies.
The full scale of public consultation was not exercised to include wider strategies, such as public meetings, meetings with the residents, billboards, as outlined in the City of Stirling's planning policy and procedure here for advertising, planning consultation procedure, of which I've highlighted and noted many areas. So the community is appropriately informed and also informed via advertising, according, as I said, to the planning consultation procedure, of the opportunities the developer was afforded. So the developer was actually afforded by planning to make amendments reiterating the weight of this development favouring the developer and eliminating residents the natural justice to respond to the amendments. I ask the City of Stirling councillors and office to retract this proposal due to a lack of process for fairness, natural justice and accountability.
So as previously stated, public consultation was undertaken in accordance with the regulations, 2015. The city planning team is bound to work with an applicant to ensure the best outcome for everyone. So they must ask them for further information. They must wait for that information to come in. Their role is to ensure that some of those things aren't conditioned, that they're actually fixed beforehand. So it is a lengthy process. And by the nature of the planning process, the officers are bound to work with the applicant through that process.
It'd be nice if they worked with us too, who are actually affected.
Laura McFadgen, please. Is Laura here? Lynn Nowak? Oh, sorry, I can't hear you. Would you like to read Laura's questions?
Can we read on her behalf?
Yes. Yep. Just before you start, can I ask for an extension of question time? Move Councillor Sundry, second to Councillor Proud. Just a show of hands, councillors, if you're happy to extend. Councillor Hatton. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll do my best at summarising these. They're quite long and I haven't actually read them.
That's right. And can you just read, just say your name and suburb on behalf of?
Michelle Cook from Wembley Downs on behalf of Laura McFadgen from Wembley Downs.
Thank you.
Okay, question 1. At the council meeting on the 31st of August, I, Laura, asked if the council was aware that the applicant carried out a road survey on a day that there was approximately 2,000 less students attending the 3 large high schools at the time. The response in the minutes is simply, the Mayor advised that this will form part of the consideration around the traffic when it is regarded with the city's own data. The DA is still under consideration. Now that the RAR has been submitted with a recommendation of approval, it can be seen in the RAR the officer has simply stated the following: the applicant's transport impact statement has been reviewed by the business unit and the proposed development is not considered to have an unacceptable impact on the local road network. I would like to know what supporting road traffic reports were utilised to suggest that this proposed development will not have an unacceptable impact on the local road network in this position.
Thank you. Mr Henderson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Looking at the traffic issues, that report that submitted by the application, including this and the city's engineering service business unit, looks at a number of data sets, including those which are called the SIDRA data, which underpins a regional transport model, main roads WA data, and the city's own traffic data. So that data is not just taken for some narrow period, it's taken over a very long period of time and gives a fairly accurate picture of the status of the traffic on those roads.
Okay, question 2. The RAR states the design of the proposed 2-storey building is consistent with the existing and future character of the locality. In no way or form is this an accurate or correct statement in regards to the existing character. And unless the council plans to allow more and more commercial sized buildings of a similar nature in this residential zone, then it isn't consistent with the future character of the locality. Is it in fact council's plan to allow and encourage large overscaled commercial sized buildings in residential areas in the future?
Mr Henderson.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, the issue of childcare premises frequently arises from time to time. They are something that is generally accepted, can be suitable in a residential area and can be can be beneficial to residents. The policy that the city uses is used to try and assess the impacts of and whether they can be mitigated and whether the childcare is appropriate in that particular location. That's what the RAR has done, and that recommendation is before the council to consider before it goes off to consideration at the JDAP.
Thank you. Question 3. Prior to this meeting, I informed the council that I had concerns with the process which enables the RAR to be submitted forward with a positive approval recommendation before it was even discussed by elected members at the council. While I understand that the discussion will still take place at tonight's meeting, only because it was called in, which is the only time planning applications get discussed by elected members, which itself seems very poor. And it seems the council has already voted. No, sorry, I'll retract that bit. In the already submitted RAR, it states the childcare premises will provide an essential service to the surrounding residents and employees, as well as create local employment opportunities, reduce the need for travel, and these comments seem to be whimsical and just a personal view not founded on fact. During the public consultation period, a total of 67 submissions were received, comprising of 66 objections and 1 letter of support. How can that information be turned around to state that it provides an essential desired service to the surrounding residents when only 1 submission of support was received?
Thank you. And look, the officers do have to do their report based on planning facts. The childcare premises does provide for the day-to-day education and care of children, which is an essential service for surrounding residents and employees of businesses in the location.
Thank you.
Lynn Nowak.
Is that the same question as the second regular twice? We covered it anyway.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
2 questions this evening, both...
Sorry, just your name and suburb.
Beg your pardon.
That's all.
Lynn Nowak, Karrinyup. 2 questions this evening regarding Davenport Street. A change of pace. Quote, at the entrance of Davenport Street, the City of Stirling has a car park outside Myers. It's in the northwest quadrant of the shopping complex. There is currently a give way sign as people exit onto Davenport Street. Can we request, implore even, that that sign be changed to a stop sign? It's really dangerous to the health when cars come screaming around the corner and nearly wipe you out.
Thank you. Mr. Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question, Mr. Nowak. Look, you can request and implore. The officers have done an assessment. The stopping sight lines or the stopping sight distances are satisfactory in our opinion, and that wouldn't necessarily warrant a stop sign. We're certainly happy to have a bit of a look at it and see what transpires on site. But yeah, so happy to take it on board.
Could you possibly do it about 10:30 in the morning, because there's a particular Subaru that parks directly opposite?
Absolutely.
Book him.
I'll go and grab a coffee.
On the dot, Mr. Littleton.
Thank you. Question number 2. I have in fact asked this question before, but it's becoming more and more obvious that it really is needed, that we really do want the council to consider placing a crosswalk on Davenport Street to the east of the daycare centre to provide safer passage for the pedestrians across the road. There are a lot of elderly people, elderly ladies in particular, who live on that eastern section of Davenport Street, and they are too fearful to cross the road, and they really do want a crosswalk there.
Mr. Littleton.
Yeah, thank you again. Look, we're certainly happy to have a look at that. I'd probably provide the same response today that we have in the past. Crosswalks are the jurisdiction and responsibility of main roads. Often they will need an assessment of pedestrian traffic as well as motor vehicle traffic. There are various warrants and criteria that would need to be met to justify a crosswalk in that location. In our experience, people don't tend to use designated crosswalks where they find, where they believe that it is safe to cross Davenport Street at any location. So those are the things working against it. when we're out there at 10:30 on a particular day, we'll certainly have a bit of a look at that as well.
I'll give you some videos next week if you like.
Mr. Littleton would love that. Thank you. And apologies, I think in the end we end up missing Mark Harding. So, just your name and suburb, please.
Mark Harding, Wembley Downs. I'd just like to know, I read the entire JDAT report. And my question to the council, number one, is, when I say council, City of Stirling, why is it the City of Stirling obviously did a lot of work with the developer to get the JDAT report to where it's at? However, why is it that when they do these developments, concessions get given here, there and there to get the developer's agenda across the line, rather than go, no, this does not comply with all of our rules, go away and do it as per our rules, which is designed to be fair to everyone? That's my question.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes, through you. The application assesses, all of the matters that are put forward, and when it doesn't meet a specific requirement or provision of a policy, variation is considered against the relevant policy and objective. The city's RAR contains a detailed assessment of the key issues against the relative planning framework, and the officers then make an assessment on the balance on the merits of the development and make the recommendation.
Sorry.
Okay, second question. Regards to the traffic report contained within the JDAT, it makes no mention of Unwin intersection being on the crest of a hill or it's a blind corner. So given that it's supposedly an engineering report or traffic management report done by experts, how much faith can you have in that report if it doesn't address those 2 points? Ask the council to reconsider.
Mr. Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, both the traffic assessment and the review are undertaken by professional engineers. They do take into consideration those matters, such as traffic volumes and the topography and the corners and where crossings and things are, and they are all considered as part of their consideration while they make their report and recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Peebles, please.
Peter Peebles, resident of Corrine. Evening, Mr. Mayor and ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Mayor, may I have your indulgence, please? I wish to make a very brief statement before I start my question. Have I your permission to make a very brief statement beforehand?
Lead it into the question, Mr. Peebles.
All right, thank you. The residents of Corrine who are affected by the parking congestion near Corrine Senior High School acknowledge that the issue is not of the City of Stirling's making, but the city is basically tasked with cleaning up the mess caused by others. We also wish to acknowledge the support that the City of Stirling has given the residents, in particular to the Mayor, Councillors Perkoff and Hatton, and the Manager of Engineering Services, Mr. Paul Giamoff. That was my statement. Leading into the questions. Question number one. The member for Corrine, Mr. Paul Lilburn, has made various comments on his Facebook page and in letters to residents claiming that he has been working with the City of Stirling to find solutions to the student parking issues in the streets surrounding the Corrine Senior High School. Can the Mayor please tell me in what way has Mr. Lilburn been working with the City of Stirling as he has claimed, and what has been the outcome of his alleged involvement?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Peebles. Look, I can't comment on what the local member has been doing. We have had no contact with the local member.
Thank you. Given that the Mayor, Councillor Perkoff Manager of Engineering Services, Paul Giamoff, attended a meeting with the headmaster of Corrine Senior High School and representatives of the Education Department on Wednesday the 1st of September to discuss potential solutions to the student parking issues of which the Council is well aware. When do you anticipate a follow-up meeting to discuss the potential solutions discussed at the September 1st meeting? And is it correct to say that this meeting has not yet taken place because of the Education Department has so far failed to get back to you with suitable times?
Thank you for the question. Yes, look, we felt it was a productive meeting. We are waiting for suitable times to come back from the Department of Education for a follow-up meeting. We anticipate this to be in the near future.
All right, whatever the near future means. Third question, if the outcome of the September 1st meeting and any further meetings fails to address all of the residents' concerns, will Council commit to parking restrictions on the streets surrounding the Corrine Senior High School, as has been repeatedly requested by the residents?
Sure. Mr. Giamoff?
Yeah, through the chair. Thank you for your question, Mr. Peebles. It would be preemptive of the city and the council to commit to say that we definitely will put in parking restrictions. All we can say at this stage is that's a potential solution that we would consider, and all we can commit to is that we will continue to work with residents and continue to work with the Department of Education to try and seek solutions that will address the issues of concern.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kiralee Kilbone? Your name and suburb, please.
Sure. Kiralee Kilbane, Churchlands. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, staff. This is just in relation to the petition we've submitted requesting that the council return the traffic management plan within Churchlands Green to the original plan. I'm sure council was aware that when the traffic plan was established in the first place, that it was approved by all levels of government and approved by bodies such as emergency services. And the trials that have been happening with the road closures simply move traffic from one part of the estate to another. So I'm wondering if council could answer on what basis or who decides where that traffic should move. A lot of the neighbours are saying that they don't want to move the problem to their neighbours. So who decides who's the most important people for that traffic to be going past, please?
Sure. Mr. Littleton? Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the question. Look, you would appreciate that the Churchland Green estate trial and traffic management has been an ongoing issue for some time. We have instituted a number of trials, and throughout that process, we have done fairly comprehensive traffic assessments to understand where traffic goes as an impact of any intervention that we would look to apply. So ultimately, our goal is to balance traffic around and through the development appropriately. We have a range we have a hierarchy of roads, local distributors, district distributors, and local access roads, all which are designed to carry traffic. And what we try and do is adequately and equitably distribute that traffic throughout all of those roads. So ultimately, council in this instance will make a determination as to what is the most appropriate traffic management devices to put in place. It will do so after careful consideration of the assessment that the city's traffic engineers have and are completing at the moment. We are proposing that item will come to council for consideration in November. I appreciate that there's a range of views. Those people that are for all of traffic devices on alumni as well as university. We're also aware that there are people who want some or none of those traffic devices. So ultimately, we'll look to balance all of those needs and come up with the best decision.
Thank you. My second question is, as I was meeting with neighbours over the weekend, many of them indicated that they hadn't been consulted at all. I think probably what happened is if they missed an initial letter some 2 years ago, they've been left off the communication loop. In fact, many also said that perhaps they got one email but certainly hadn't been emailed regarding the second trial. So I'm just wondering if council would be able to investigate why everybody within the state hasn't been asked their opinion regarding the current trials, given that any changes are going to be permanent. We just feel like everybody should be consulted and connect effectively with the process.
Yes, we can.
Thank
And we're
you.
certainly happy, if you've got some details of the people specifically as well, it'd be good to get that just so we can follow up.
Yeah, well, they're all
afterwards.
ratepayers, so I'm sure.
Yep.
But yeah, absolutely,
Yep.
we can. My final question really, I've just completely lost my train of thought. Oh yes, my final question was really, would it be possible for council to please remove the temporary barriers at the corner of Alumni and Pearson, as you have cited safety concerns that led you to remove them down at the Empire and University Avenue. However, same safety concerns do not seem to apply to our end of the estate. So we're wondering why the inconsistency, and if you could please remove them given the trial is finished.
Mr. Littleton? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we gave a commitment to the community that we would leave the trial in place until such time as council made a determination. That determination is currently proposed for November of this year. We have made the decision to remove the temporary traffic management that is in place at Empire and University, specifically because people are travelling on the wrong side of the road and undertaking illegal traffic movements. As a result of that, traffic management, we also have an issue with the town of Cambridge around elements of the traffic management that is in place, and some of that would render the traffic management more difficult and less legible for motorists. So, as opposed to debating the issue with Cambridge, we made the decision to remove the temporary traffic management in that location only at this point in time. So, the Alumni and Pearson traffic management devices will stay in place until such time as council makes its determination.
Thank you.
Thank you. Simon Wheeler? Name and suburb.
Simon Wheeler, Scarborough. Good evening, Mayor and councillors and staff. In relation to item 13.1, the childcare factory at Hale and Unwin, which is on tonight's agenda, but wasn't on Tuesday's planning agenda. And I was under the impression this application had been called in. However, the RAR is already with the DAP. This is an application for a discretionary use, which has attracted nearly 100% objection from those who were consulted. Mayor, when council delegated away the last of their authority on regular development applications, we were ensured, and I was at that meeting, that there was still the calling process, a process that provided opportunity for ratepayers to have their say at both committee and council meetings, to make deputations, so you can actually hear all of their concerns, not through the filter of the administration. What happened to those assurances, Mayor Irwin, and were they, as it appears, made without merit?
Sorry, thanks everyone, but I'll have to ask you to repeat the last question because you were rudely interrupted.
Oh, I don't think it was rude at all. I enjoyed that. Were those assurances that all the delegated authority, everything that was delegated to the administration, that people would still get their chance to have a say at committee and at council? They're having a say tonight at council, obviously, but what happened to the committee meeting, I suppose?
Thank you. Mr. Henderson?
Look, thank you for the question and for you, Mr. Mayor. The process for dealing with a JDAP application is prescribed in the planning and development regulations for JDAPs, and that process is for the city's officers usually to write a report to the JDAP. This council has determined that it would have the opportunity, should it wish to call an application in, and that's what's happened here. Quite frequently the timeframes are very tight for that to happen, given when we get notification and when we're able to prepare the report. So that does give the opportunity for the report to be put on the public agenda prior to the JDAP for the council to consider it, and for submitters or the interested members of the public to attend the council and raise any issues through the question time.
Sorry, Mayor, and this isn't one of my questions, but supplementary to that, the RAR is already with the DAP. If council, in its good sense, decides tonight to overturn that DAP and refuse it, can that still be sent to the DAP?
Yes. Yeah, it has no bearing. The fact that it's already there doesn't change what council's role is this evening.
I understand that. I mean, but how does that?
Council's determination tonight overrides what the JDAP currently have.
Thank you, Mayor. Second question, regards to item 12.1 CF1. In the report, it says that Main Roads has indicated that any additional coverage of the trench would increase project costs. If history is a guide, I do not think that Development WA give a monkeys what the city say, and certainly community input is routinely addressed with a similar contempt. But if a trench is to be dug, I think it is essential to put a lid on it and activate the space above to try and match the aspirations of the laid-back beacher feel of the scheme and not that of inner-city Birmingham. Ideally, this would be paid for by development contributions that matched building heights and not the current scheme cap of 12 stories. Mayor, when the Three Oceans developer at the moment will be paying a maximum of 36 stories of developer contributions for over 80 stories. I don't think this is equitable. And surely the very first amendment to the scheme will be to address this inequity. So my question is, Mayor Owen, will the city petition Development WA to amend the development contribution plans to help fund this quite foreseeable disruption? And if not, why not?
I think you covered about 4 different subjects there, Mr. Wheeler. The first one is the item that you're referring to on West Coast Highway is an item on the agenda this evening, and the committee deliberations around that probably followed where you're heading in terms of a better public realm and ensuring that it was more than a trench in the future. Also acknowledging the fact that there might be a need for some ceding of land in the future, no matter what the outcome there. In terms of Development WA, as you're also aware, currently normalisation process will be occurring. I would say it's a moot point for us to lobby Development WA at this stage. We're looking, I think Council endorsed for that to come back under City of Stirling's control with development contributions.
In late 2022, I believe. My third question, Mayor, in development contributions aside, my primary concern in reference to the trenching spoken about in CF1 are for the businesses and residents around West Coast Highway. The previous foreshore redevelopment saw off some 15 or more Scarborough businesses, and those that did survive were offered token compensation, which was too little and too late for many of them. Yet neither the city's recommendation nor indeed its report considers or even mentions the potentially devastating effects of what will probably be 2 or 3 years of major, if not fatal, disruption to local business should this trenching go ahead. So my question is, Mayor, what actions will the city start taking now, proactively, to provide protection and assurances to businesses in the Scarborough redevelopment zone as and when such works proceed?
Thank you. And the City of Stirling's only had some very preliminary discussions with the different agencies around this. The item on the agenda this evening is about the ceding of the land for a future solution. I think City acknowledged that at committee meeting and talked about working closely to understand what the future of that area and lobby hard for what the City of Stirling thought the community would want, including protecting the businesses along that area.
Thank you, Mayor.
Daniela Iron.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniela Ion and I live in Nulamara. As community engagement and experts, along with city officer, provide a matrix of evaluation and expertise, which is paramount Sorry.
I'm sorry, I might just,
Sorry.
yeah. No, that wasn't you, it was the microphone.
Oh,
That's-
sorry.
Sorry, I might just get you to start again if that's all right.
Yes, okay. As community engagement and experts, along with city officer, provide the metrics of evaluation and expertise, which is paramount to preserving City of Stirling history and heritage for future generations. My question is, are councillors aware by disappearing the Heritage Advisory Group that they are turning their back at City of Stirling 50 years of history as a city?
Look, that item is on the agenda this evening for council to consider. Council have debated that, and the report does outline that that it certainly isn't turning its back on history and heritage.
Thank you. My next question is, at the election meeting 2019, the City of Stirling was supposed to consider incentive under the forest plan to preserve significant trees on private land. My question is, why has this report still not come to council for the public to say?
Yep. Mr. Henderson?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, if my memory serves me correctly, although sometimes it doesn't, as I approach my senior years, that was for you, Councillor Lagan.
Leave the jokes to me, Mr.
Henderson. The council determined that they would hold off on undertaking a report on incentives, as the state government has introduced and is in the process of introducing further controls intended to protect the urban tree canopy through revision of the various R code documents.
And it was discussed in council.
Thank you. And my last questions, why isn't the City of Stirling using ratepayers' money to purchase property in the City of Stirling to assist more businesses and alternative accommodation?
They are.
Good.
Yeah, so the City of Stirling has a property strategy, it has a strategic property working group, and then property transactions come through council, and we do transact property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, that is the last person I have, if I'm correct. Then I will continue on. So I now go to item 8, which is application of leave of absence. Councillor Spagnola has requested a leave of absence for the period 14th of September 2021 to 29th of September 2021. I've requested a leave of absence for October the 12th. Councillors, are there any other applications for leave of absence?
Excuse me, Mayor, we've got more questions and it was actually submitted and you haven't asked.
I'm sorry, I did ask if there are any other questions.
No, you didn't ask. You actually went straight into item 8.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I did ask, and I did ask and pause and look. But those will be on the minutes, and they will form part of the minutes of the agenda.
But that's the second time it's been omitted.
Councillors, are there anyone else who would like to apply for a leave of absence? Councillor Lagan.
Yes, can I have a leave of absence from 27 September to 30th?
Yes, is anyone else? Councillor Farrelly.
Mr. Mayor, I need to stand. Okay, it'll be October the 4th to the 7th, I think, somewhere around there.
Let's get it right.
School holidays. Yeah, I know, that's what I was trying to look for, actually, just a minute.
Thank you. Is there any other application for leave of absence? If not, can I have a mover and a seconder to accept those? Move Councillor Sandri, seconded Councillor Reeve. We can go to the vote, please. Thank you. That is unanimous, noting Councillor Ferranti is out of the room. I'll now go to item 9, which is confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the council minutes of the 31st of August 2021? Move Councillor Hatton, seconded Councillor Migdale. We can go to the vote, please. And thank you. That is Councillor Caddy, Ferrante, Hatton, Lagan, Migdale, Perkoff, Proud, Ree, Sandri, Sargent, Thornton and Mayor myself, and against Councillor Farrelly. Announcements by the presiding member. Look, I do have one tonight, and I'm sure it won't be a popular one, but I think it's important. I think it's important we get this out on the table. We're not new to these council meetings and we're not new to dealing with the public. We deal with very contentious items around the community all of the time. This one particularly, though, has been pretty tough on councillors and on the City of Stirling officers over the last few weeks. Now, I just want to clarify, the introduction of DAPs in Western Australia back in 2011 were aimed to help improve the planning system by providing more transparency, consistency and reliability in decision-making on complex development applications. Now, the two key points of a JDAP is the involvement of experts with technical knowledge on the panel and the removal of influence and biased decision-making that can occur in local government through pressures placed on councillors. The involvement of independent experts has helped strike an appropriate balance between local representation and professional advice in decision-making by ensuring that decisions made by the panel are based on planning merits of an application. Whilst I don't personally agree the system is perfect, and that's on record, and recently we've seen some examples where arguably the community context is not given enough significance. Planning applications such as this childcare centre highlight the massive conflict that arises. Tonight we are being asked to provide referral comment only to an officer submission, giving us the ability to endorse, not endorse or amend with comments. Despite some rhetoric going around, the fact that we are providing this after the referral has been submitted on record does not alter the significance of councillors' role tonight or their input. I'm making these comments up front as I believe the comments on social media, via emails we have constantly received, have not only been inflammatory and untrue, but have shown the exact reason councils will continue to remain completely challenged and conflicted in making unbiased decisions. I want to read you some of these extracted statements because these are the statements our planning officers have to listen to. These are young planning officers who have families at home and have to deal with this. These are comments that our councillors have to constantly listen to and read in front of their families at home, with what can only and objectively be described as fraudulent content. That is impossible to conclude this does not smack of corruption. When someone is killed or seriously injured, I will ensure the coroner and the media is made aware of the City of Stirling and you were forewarned. If you continue to do so, we're entitled to take legal action against you, as well as reporting this to other agencies, including the Department of Local Government and the CCC. If you approve DA XXXX, take note, we will pursue you. The group opposed to the childcare development proposal has been pressuring me to go to the media. If you approve XX development plans, I'll be going to the media in relation to everything. Unreliable information enabling invalid decision making. Amend your details of the DA to factually reveal the negative impact. This doesn't reflect everyone in that community, but it certainly reflects many number of them. It's not okay. And on top of this, the phone calls and the messages received, and in fact some of the emails are even titled class action. It is important to note none of these statements above all the threats are relevant to us in making a decision based on planning grounds. But it is not fair for councillors to be put under that sort of pressure when you're expecting them to support the community during this time and listen in an unbiased way and make an unbiased decision on planning outcomes. The role of council is not to be the planners. Our planning team do an incredibly fantastic job at that, and I will say that on record. Our role as councillors and as mayor is to add community context and understanding to the equation and ensure that the intent of our planning scheme is upheld. Thank you. No, you are not. You've been doing it for the last couple of weeks. I'll now move on to item 11, unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil. Item 12, reports and recommendations of committees. Councillors, with your indulgence, I will bring item 13 forward as we have people in the gallery who want to listen to it, if that's all right, and we'll do the reports afterwards. We'll now move to item 13.1, and I'll ask to step down out of the chair, noting that Councillor Migdale and Councillor Ree will be stepping out of the room for this item as they're on JDAP, and I'll ask Bianca Sandri to take the chair.
Good evening, everybody. As the Mayor has just suggested, I'm the Deputy Mayor taking position while the Mayor is on the floor. We are on item 13.1, which is lot 172, house number 24, Unwin Avenue, and lot 173, house number 159, Hale Road, Wembley Downs, childcare premises. Do I have a mover of a motion? Mayor Irwin?
Yeah, I have an alternative recommendation, if we can have that on the board, please.
Thank you. And do you mind reading that out, please?
Sure. So, given that the City of Stirling is now in caretaker mode and cannot deal with contentious items, Council determines the call-in request by Councillor Elizabeth Ree is not valid, and Council does not seek to provide endorsement or non-endorsement of the officer's report. And the reason for the motion, councillors are in receipt of multiple emails and communications from residents which show a heightened interest in opposition to the development application. Given the caretaker period is current, it is not appropriate for Council to add comment to the officer report.
Thank you, Mayor Irwin. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sargent. Is there anyone against the motion? Councillor Farrelly. Thank you. Mayor Irwin?
No reserve, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Sargent?
Isn't this procedural?
No, it doesn't suggest defer or refer, so.
I believe the motion pretty much speaks for itself, so I won't add any value to it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Farrelly?
Look, I might stand corrected in regard to the caretaker mode side of it, but in terms of a report that has caused consternation in a neighbourhood, I think that we need to get a look. I apologise to those who've received a huge amount of a spurious whatever it is that's been going on, because I am aware of that area in Wembley Downs. I have seen the traffic congestion as well that happens at the moment anyway. But I'm also aware of the fact that it's a residential area, the amenity is residential. We are looking at our local, our policy, consultation policy, 16.8, I think it is, 16.18, community consultation. That's our local planning policy. We're looking at that, and in that the childcare centres are going to be changed from simple to complex, because they are no longer seen as what initially used to be a mum and dad type residences. They're actually now more of a commercial base, and I believe this is probably, and look, I know it's going to the JDAP, but in terms of the council and in terms of the city, the policy will go through a change in regard to childcare. They will move that from simple to complex, and that will mean that it is treated as a commercial type of enterprise. I think that's outstanding, and that's what we need to take into mind. We're about to make that approve or disapprove, whatever you like to call it, on those local planning policy 6.18 tonight. The other side of it is the fact that there is thank you. Look, it's really in regard to the fact that it's a residential area. The other side of the road we've all mentioned is Hale School. We've mentioned that Hale Road is a very busy road, but when you look at both sides, this particular side, and you look through the what the residences around in the 200 to 400, 500 metres, it's all very residential or parkland. It is not the same as if it was on the other side of the road, for instance, where you are looking at a school, you've got all the amenities.
Chair. My understanding is this is a motion that talks about the caretaker mode, and council cannot deal with this item, and Councillor Farrelly is should be talking against the motion, not about the contents of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent, and I will accept that point of order. Councillor Farrelly, if we can please stick to the motion at hand, which is regarding whether it's a caretaker issue as opposed to the item itself. Thank you.
If I may use this one, if it's a caretaker issue or not, I think it would be nice for it to be, but it can't be, because we've got a JDAP at the end of the week. we need to have, we've got coming out of the city staff a very comprehensive report. It is one that we as a council have to, I believe, make a determination on, particularly as we have a community who have positively shown that they are not welcoming this particular change into their neighbourhood. And I believe that as a transparent council, regardless of whether in caretaker mode or not, and I hate to say this against our mayor's recommendation, but I do believe that as a council we should make a determination on this.
Thank you, Councillor Farrelly. Apologies, too many Fs. And Councillor Caddy.
Yeah, just briefly. I was very surprised to see this come onto our agenda. And I think that in future it actually should be written into our policies that issues like this should not be brought to council during caretaker period, because caretaker periods are specifically set aside so that what goes on in the council chambers doesn't unduly affect the local government elections that are going on. And, you know, issues such as this do have a material impact on elections, and it puts the incumbent councillors under enormous amounts of pressure, because it's just unfair that they can potentially, you know, be the campaign of you know, an anti-campaign as a result of the votes on a matter like this. That's what the caretaker period was put in place to protect. It was put in place to protect sitting councillors from negative ramifications that happened during election time. It also was put in place to stop us from taking undue advantage of positive decisions that we could take during the caretaker period. It has to cut both ways. That's what the caretaker period is for, so I think this is an appropriate motion.
Thank you, Councillor Caddy. Councillor Proud.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. This is entirely a contentious matter, and it certainly should not be here in front of us, because we're in caretaker mode. So, but with all due respect, council may be, I am not. I am not up for election. So I will support the people. They come from my ward, the Doubleview ward, so I can speak on it. But I'm outlining this is absolutely correct, and it should be supported, but I cannot support it.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to raise comment? No, I'll go back to the mover, Mayor Irwin.
I think I know what Councillor Proud meant at the end there. That's very cryptic. Look, I don't need to talk a lot about this. You know, it may seem pretty harsh, but it really is about just good governance. This is an issue that I know for a fact there's councillors around this table who have been very challenged in the last few weeks. I've taken their phone calls. It puts normal people under incredible stress with the level of threats that we've received.
Can I please ask the gallery to be quiet while the chamber is in process? Thank you.
And that is exactly what I'm talking about. It's something that we don't normally see in this council, even dealing with massive contentious applications. This particularly has rolled up, and the emails we've received, and I can say it, I'll openly say it in public, with threats of litigation, etc., cause some decision making around this table. There's no way it can be unbiased. And I can tell you now, if the report went, the first thing I would do as a developer is appeal the city's report anyway and say that they met it during caretaker against their policy. So I put this in the interest of good governance and letting the planning report on its merits sit with JDAP. The members of the gallery, the residents, may attend JDAP and put forward their concerns of how it will affect their amenity. And that is the decision maker, and that's the right body, in my opinion, for this to happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Irwin. And just for the benefit of the gallery, just to understand the motion that's put forward, we are currently in local government election period, which means that this council is under caretaker in accordance with our policy, and we have to be mindful of the decisions made within this chamber with respect to contentious items, and as Councillor Caddy suggested, which puts us in an advantage and disadvantage period. So this is the reason why the Mayor has moved this motion, just to provide clarity to the gallery. I will now move to the decision, if everyone can please vote. Councillor Hatton. Can someone please assist Councillor Hatton? Can someone please assist Councillor Hatton? Oh, thank you. So that motion is carried. The councillors for are Councillors Caddy, Ferranti, Hatton, Lagan, Perkov, Sandry, Sargent, Thornton and Mayor Irwin, and councillors against are Councillors Farrelly and Proud. Thank you. I will now leave the seat and the Mayor can resume his seat.
Thank you. Councillors Sandri, was Councillor Reid? Sorry, Councillor Migdale is back in. Councillor Reid is back in the chamber as well. We will now move to the Planning and Development Committee items. Councillors, item 12.1 DS1 is required to be pulled out as Councillor Sandri has declared a financial interest, and item 12.1 CF1 is required to be pulled out as it was referred to tonight's meeting. Councillors, do you wish to pull out any of the other items? Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull out 12.1 DS4, not so much to speak against it, just to vote against it.
Sure. Thank you. Is there any other items? Councillor Farrelly.
So I'd like to, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call out 12.1 DS3 and have we done the one on, oh gosh, 12.1 CF1?
Yes, that's required to be pulled out.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Ree.
Yes, thank you. May I please have 12.1 DS2 on page 68, please?
There we go. We're going to leave 12.1 PRSE1 in? Yep, okay. All right, let's start with 12.1 DS1. It's Lot 8, House number 139, Weaponess Road, Wembley Downs. Extension of non-conforming use consulting rooms. Councillor Sandri will leave the chamber. Thank you. Councillor Proud, as Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to move the committee recommendation on pages 10 and 11.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Caddy. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Ree. Councillor Proud.
I'll wait.
Thank you. Councillor Caddy.
I think this got a fair amount of debate at committee. I think the only concerns that were raised were around the proximity of the parking, and that was satisfactorily addressed by the officers at committee. Just note that there is no, more intensity of use. It's merely an extension of the consulting rooms. I think it's fairly straightforward. Thanks.
Councillor Ree, you're opposed?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to refer you to the conditions on page 10, please. B, C and E. All of them require somebody to go and ensure that there is only one health professional at one time there. They also ensure that they are not going over their hours. My question, please, Mr. Mayor, is who from the city, my apologies, is actually going to make sure that there is only one consultant, that those hours are adhered to?
I would say it would be our compliance team, but in essence, if you read the report, this isn't any change of use or change of intensity or anything that's different from the last couple of decades at this site. It's the same operator.
Mr. Mayor, it doesn't mean they won't expand. My question was, who is going to check on the checker?
Sure.
No.
Yeah, I did. I said the compliance team.
Okay, that's a lot of money. This particular site is subject to a lot of flooding, and I know that for a fact. I don't see anything in here. On J, it says the verge parking to be permitted in all existing hard-stand areas with the verge. If we're going to give this approval, I would have thought we would have done something about the drainage and made somebody responsible to increase the curbing?
I would think that would be us if we were going to increase the curbing, but
We're going to take away the car parking bays. We've got a shortfall of 4 car parking bays on page 15 and 17. And therefore, if they end up parking at the front with the verge, that could exacerbate the drainage issue. So I'm just wondering whether or not that actually should be, because it's got a 4, and I won't make comments about how the car parking bays were worked out. But there is a shortfall, which means that they would probably park on the verge, which is already an issue with drainage and other things. Plus, it's not far from the corner where actually it does have a lot of accidents, etc. So my concern is this report isn't addressing all the other issues. And I take it on board that there is only one person that has actually made a comment, which I wonder with our current policy that the reason that only one person made a comment was probably because most people didn't know, which is nothing we can do. But I'm making that comment as someone who lives in the area, knows that we've had drainage issues, knows there could be traffic issues and that, and I just wondered why this wasn't actually caught up in this report for whatever reason.
I would only suggest that the applicant didn't have drainage issues and that we're actually removing car parking and putting more landscaping, which would be better for drainage.
If the water goes that way. If the water comes down, we're probably fine. If the water's coming off Weaponess, it'll go straight in like it usually does. Okay, just my comment. Page 17, where we've got the comment about due to the slope of the land and proximity of the access way to Weaponess Road and Burmouth Crescent, the site is unable to safely accommodate car parking, which is one of the comments about the drainage. Therefore, no car parking bays are proposed on site. The subject is within 100 metres of approximately 100 car parking bays, being 30 verge parking bays. Is there a reciprocal parking agreement? Because previously, if we approve such a development, then there should always be a reciprocal car parking agreement.
Yeah, I don't think this application didn't rely on reciprocal car parking because, one, our officers suggested no car parking because it was safer, and secondly, it's a public car park.
If the parking on page 17, in the car parking, is within 100 metres radius of the subject site, there's additional 30 parking bays within the road reserve. So what you're saying is that because there's no issue to date, therefore they can access other parking, but we haven't got an agreement about reciprocal parking. But then if it does occur in the future, then possibly it could be brought back to council?
I wouldn't think it would need to. I don't see how you think it's going to change. There's no change in this use. This use is with this particular dentist who operates out of there.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the use and everything. What I'm saying is, if it changes, if he has increase in people, etc., then whole of this will change. And if nobody's checking it, my concern mainly was to do with the parking, but more the drainage, because I know that is an issue in the area.
Sure.
That's all. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? If not, yes, Councillor Farrelly.
Look, I also was, as I've made aware to people at the planning committee, that the parking across the road in the shopping centre, I've had a re-look at that, and I do think that it can accommodate that those clients coming into the surgery at this stage. I would like to see, though, if that Weaponess Road becomes a far busier road, that we have a crosswalk or some ability to cross that road, because I do know people that just, speed through that island, and you don't want something happening as someone's recovering from a dental injection or something. So could that probably be looked at in the future as a future planning need, that we might have to have or some sort of crossing type thing, that if we can get one such as we might be proposing for down at the beach, and you never know, we might have something that just differentiates the road from the normal road. Thanks.
Do you want me to get some officer comment on that? Yep. Who should we go to? Mr. Henderson, to start.
Thank you, seeing as I'm dealing with the engineering comments tonight as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think the answer to that is if the need arises for some sort of traffic calming or whatever down there, then the engineering teams would look at that and determine an appropriate solution for it, and would have to be funded by the council and then implemented.
Councillor Ferranti.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I was just looking at the aerial photograph and it shows a crosswalk type style just prior to the roundabout, and it's pretty clear here from the top view that there is a crossover there.
Yeah, I think, yeah, there's a refuse island, but I don't know if there's a crosswalk, but yeah, I think it's been answered. Is there any other indication? If not, I'll go to Councillor Proud to close debate. Happy? All right, then I will put that item. This is Councillor Thornton. There we go. Thank you, councillors, and that is unanimous. Noting that Councillor Sandri is still out of the chamber. We will now go on to item 12.1 DS2, Local Planning Policy 6.18, Public Consultation. Councillor Proud, Chair of the Committee.
Thank you. I'll move the committee recommendation, page 68.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Caddy. And opposed? Councillor Ree. Councillor Proud.
This is just formalising going out to public comment.
Thank you. Councillor Caddy? No. Councillor Ree?
Thank you. I do believe that we've actually considered this consultation policy many times over the years, and some of it is outside our parameter. However, I think because we're making a report and it's for the purpose of public advertising, I think it's important that we actually say more in the report when it goes out, so people can follow that a lot of this decision making is not to do with local government. I think that's really important. I don't think this addresses it for people to understand when even if they're talking about the garage next door to them or a footy field with a great big stadium. I don't think this report to go out to the general public for them to understand how much the public consultation is going to change. And a lot of it's got nothing to do with local government. We're trying to adhere to the rules to the best of our ability. We know from various things of late, whether it's Yellow Cafe, whether it's Heritage, whether it's Karrinyup, whether it's Wembley Downs, whether it's Spoonbill Daycare Centre, a lot of people feel that it's their right to make a comment, and they should have the right to make a comment because that's what local government's supposed to be about. They also should have the right to be heard and consulted properly. A lot of these rules are being taken out of local government's hand, and we're still getting the umbrage from that, where we don't have actually any power. I think it's important that if we're going to go out for public consultation and public advertising, that this is written in a better way so people understand it. So I wouldn't like to approve the way it's written as such. I think it really needs a lot more work, and I know we have to prepare the planning scheme, but I don't think this is the way we should be going about it. I think we need more guts, if you like, to it. We need more common language in it, and we need to maybe do a flow chart so people can see this is what happens at the beginning, this is where people come in, and yes, this council supported third-party appeal rights, which I'm very happy that I was pushed to put forward, and the councillors around the table supported. Unfortunately, it didn't get supported by state government, so we're where we are, and I think we need to actually sell that. People need to lobby their state members of parliament to make the changes. We can only do so much at our level. But at the same time, I think consideration should be made that if it says that we only talk to those in close proximity, if we're going to build a great big monolith in the middle of a residential area, I think we have a duty of care to make sure that at least a radius of 200 metres are told. I thought they were wet, but anyway. I just think that we should be doing it a lot better. And it can be done easily on a flow chart. It really can. And I think state government needs to get a reality check of how much work this is costing local government by our officers to answer all of this. how much work and how much frustration it's causing to the community across the board. And we need to sit there, if we're going to go out, make it user-friendly for our own people, because these are our ratepayers. These are the people that pay the wages around here. These are the people that local government is supposed to be looking at. The community, our local community. And I just don't feel that we can go out like it is. Thank you.
Thank you. John, a private comment? I'll get the shoes. Yeah, Mr. Henderson?
Look, I don't want to enter into debate, but thank you, Mr. Mayor. The policy is trying to provide the ability to allow things like child daycares to be advertised a bit wider than they would be under the regulations of one of the things that it is trying to do. There will be a communication package that also goes out with this as part of the advertising, which will clearly outline why the changes are made and what the extent of changes council is able to make and what are given the new regulations.
Thank you. Now, is there anyone else who'd like to provide comment? If not, I'll go to Councillor Hatton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My issue that I've had for quite some time with signage. I know the minimum signage, the signage is 5 square metres, and that's what it should be. And I don't think it'd be any greater. But the problem I've had over many years is that these sites that are going to be developed, the signs are parallel to the road. And no one, well, very few people really stop to read them. And you don't really know what's going on unless you're one of 100 people that does stop in a busy life. And I would have thought by now the city would have maybe thought about having signage on an angle so that it becomes more visible and can be looked at in more detail. Can I have some comment on that, please?
Mr. Henderson?
Confirm with Ms. Chisholm, I don't think we do signs anymore under this policy. That's something that was changed, so it's the angle or otherwise of them is no longer something that we will be able to consider, because a move away from those signs to allowing us to advertise more on social media and internet-based media as well as traditional forums.
And it is going out to public consultation.
Yeah, in response to that, thank you through the Mayor. I find that, inadequate myself, and it's a bit disappointing. I think there's a lot of good things, very good things in this policy, and the changes are good, but that to me is just not right. Thank you.
Councillor Farrelly?
In regard to the signs, and thank you to Councillor Hatton for raising that, because the way I read it, and I'm reading this diligently, I hope, is that they would be reducing from 5 square metres to 1 square metre type of sign. But if they go out on social media, and I have a concern with social media, the residents in the coastal ward, a number of them are probably nearly heading into retirement age and things of that nature. They're not really social media, what would you call it? They don't do it all the savvy. They don't do it all the time. They still read their papers. You go into the cafes, the papers are still well used. And I would like to see the council, regardless, to have, and I don't know how you do this is what I really need to ask, can we somehow ensure that there are signs, even if they're council signs, that go up in regard to these,
Let me get you
developments?
some clarification. Ms. Shears?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the signs are still applicable for complex applications. So whatever the council defines in this policy as being a complex application will have a sign on site for the 28 days. But where it is a standard application for 14 days, there's no longer a requirement under the regulation. And the city is unable to put in the policy a requirement for a sign for a standard application.
Any other councillors? If not, I'll go to Councillor Proud to close debate.
Nothing further.
Thank you. I will put that item. Councillor Perkoff and Hatton. Thank you, and that motion is carried with Councillor Reeve voting against, all other councillors voting for. We'll go to item 12.1 DS3, the Heritage Advisory Group. Councillor Proud, being pulled out by Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll recommend the committee recommendation, page 104.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ferrante. And opposed, Councillor Farrelly. Councillor Proud.
As discussed at committee, this did take up quite some time in discussion. This is the third time that this working group, or advisory group as it's known now, has been suggested to disband because it's not actually undertaking the role that it was put in, the purpose for it to begin with. This doesn't take away from any of the value that we've got from our heritage societies around the place, and reading the report, they actually supported the disbanding. Fully support this. It'll be what it's going to be.
Thank you. Councillor Ferrante.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this has been a discussion for a long period of time, and to be honest, the last, I guess, meeting or committee was not at all, there wasn't a large of participants. What we do is we normally engage the Mount Lawley Society, Mount Lawley ratepayers, but we also have our heritage program that we do run through council, so people can put forward, or councillors can put forward, anything that is related to a heritage issue. We've got the tick from the relevant stakeholders, so that's an opportunity for communications to go between planning and those stakeholders, and it's something that should be considered.
Thank you. Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, I have actually asked for an alternative recommendation to be put, and I would hope that that's somewhere in the...
Yep, so it'll be a foreshadowed, so we've got a motion on the table, so it's just...
I would actually like it as alternative, because every time...
No, so you got two choices, so you can't have two motions on the table. You can either have
amend.
it as foreshadowed...
Sorry, I can amend. That...
No. So you got two things, listen.
All right, okay, tell me.
You can either foreshadow if it's a significantly different motion. If it's a slight change with the same intent, then you can move an amendment. Or otherwise, if it's a procedural to hold this over for longer or anything like that, then it's a procedural and you can put that motion.
Well, I'd like it to be a procedural, but...
so then we can't debate it, so you tell me what your procedural motion is.
Well, is that the council defers disbanding the Heritage Advisory Group until the new council of 2021 to 2023 operates.
That's all we need, I think, for now.
Okay.
Yep, if the intent is clear, is to hold over until a new council to decide. Councillor Ree has seconded that. It's a procedural motion, so there's no debate. I will put that motion. Yep, there we go. All right, and that motion is carried with Councillor Sargent voting against, all other councillors voting for, so that will be held over until a new council to relook at. We now go to item 12.1 DS4, Local Planning Scheme number 3, Amendment number 121, lot number 196, house number 1, Waterloo Street, June Danner, rezone from residential R50 to mixed use initiation. This is Councillor Proud. I'll get you to move the...
I'll move the committee recommendation on page 1.
Councillor Migdale has moved,
19.
Seconded that application. I don't believe anyone's against at this stage. It was just to register a vote against, so we don't have to debate that. We can just put that to the vote. We've just got Councillor Caddy Perkoff free. If we can get some votes. Thank you, and that motion is carried with Councillor Sargent and myself voting against and all other councillors voting for. We're now going to item 12.1 CF1, Amendment number 1 to Scarborough Redevelopment Scheme, widening of West Coast Highway Primary Regional Road Reserve. This item was referred from committee to council. So we'll still go to the chair, Councillor Proud. Yeah, sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, just to note, it's impartial, but I'll be leaving the room.
Sure. So Councillor Sandri is leaving the room, so we'll just wait before that item comes up. That's all right. Councillor Proud.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, this was deferred at committee after some discussion to come to council for some rewording, and I think with your approval, it should go to perhaps one of the coastal ward councillors to deal with.
Sure. So I believe there is an alternative recommendation. So who is Councillor Caddy?
Yep, if I can put up the alt rec that was sent through. It's in our white papers. Yes, was sent through by the officers today. Do you want me to read it through?
Yeah, if you can just read it, please.
Yeah. One that council notes, although actually I'd like to change the word notes, please, to asserts, to make it stronger.
Oh, it's a strong word, Councillor.
I know. The importance of agreeing a transport and access solution for Scarborough to reduce traffic congestion and enhance east-west connectivity in collaboration with the state government and the local community. 2, that council advises Development WA of its conditional support for amendment number 1 to the Scarborough Redevelopment Scheme to widen the West Coast Highway Reservation, subject to the following actions being undertaken prior to public advertising. 1, a meeting of the Combined Agency Transport and Access Group is to be held to consider and endorse the options investigated and agreed recommendations, a draft engagement and communication strategy, and a brief for an urban design study. B, prepare plans and undertake the urban design study for West Coast Highway in consultation with the city to ensure the width of the road reservation is sufficient to accommodate a high-quality pedestrian cyclist environment, tree planting on both verges, and opportunities for street-level activation. C, undertake community engagement on the above items, and D, prepare a report on the above and a recommendation on the preferred design solutions to be presented to Council and the KTAG for endorsement.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Farrelly. Is anyone opposed to that? If not, I will put that item. And that, Councillor, yep, that is unanimous. Again, noting that Councillor Sandri, was out of the chamber. So we'll ask her to come back in now. That does bring us to the balance of reports, which is item 12.1, PRSE1. I think it's worth probably mentioning it. It's a new licence over whole of lot 5616, house number 59, Campion Avenue, Balcatta, to the Campion Community Garden Incorporated on page 164. Councillor Proud, as chair of the committee.
Sorry. We're doing in block, yes?
There's only one left, that's
I
why
understand
I
that.
read it out. Yep.
So I'm moving the Campion.
Yes.
Right.
You can call it balance of reports.
Very
Campion,
happy
doesn't matter.
to move that item.
Right. And I'm guessing Councillor Perkov will want to second that. And I will put that one to the vote. Councillors, can we have a vote? What's up? Guys, let's focus. We'll just get this vote done, hey? Councillor Migdale? That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to the direct to council reports. We've dealt with item 13.1, so we'll go to item 13.2, the State Infrastructure Strategy City of Stirling submission on page 178. Councillors, do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Lagan?
Yes, officer's recommendation on page 178.
Councillor Sandri, seconded. Is there anyone opposed to this? Councillor Ree? Councillor Lagan?
Nothing to add.
Councillor Sandri?
Just briefly, I think it's a really well put together report or response to the report, the IWA recommendations by the city's officers, and I support what they've put in there. Thank you.
Councillor Ree?
Thank you very much. It's an interesting report. I know that we have to do it in with regard to certain parameters, which I fully support. I'm just a bit concerned, even though the state government, and we are questioning what the state government's got in their head at the moment, but as we are local and we're here for the people, I'm just concerned that when we look at the key themes on page 179 in the key sectors, why does not the community or consultation factor anywhere? If we're going to go forward with an infrastructure strategy that is sitting there and saying, let's build a stadium in a park in the middle of a residential area, I think that the themes should still have something to do with community or consultation. I find these are very rigid, and I'm getting more concerned whether we look at JDAP or WA development or anything you want to call it on the state government, our hands are becoming more tied. If we're going to sit there and look at some of these submissions that the state government is
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
we
need
to put let's just hear your point of order, Councillor Caddy.
This isn't a state government document. This is the West Australian Infrastructure, WA Infrastructure Department. It's actually an independent body. So this isn't coming from the state government. So it's not dealing with the full gamut of things that the state government looks after. This is just the 20-year infrastructure strategy.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ree.
One would argue that Development WA is not a state government one either, it's just an agency. Same parameter, we're still looking at the same level. My apologies if you missed my interpretation. It was the fact that I was saying it's outside local government hands. That's the point. More and more of these infrastructure, little committees, whatever you want to call them, agencies, are taking away the power from local government, who is taking away the power from the community, and it's their backyard. We seem to be forgetting that this is what we're here for. It's community service. It's to representing the community. All these proposals and submissions, if we don't sit there now and write about the fact it's about our community, our bread and butter, then we're losing it. It doesn't matter whether it's an agency or what it is. The fact is that we are taking it away from us. I don't believe that we're
Point of clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Point of clarification.
Can I just have clarification that this document that the officers have based their comments on is not actually taking any powers away from the City of Stirling?
Yep. So let's just get some comment from Mr. Littleton on this one. Oh, Mr. Henderson, sorry.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. This is the draft infrastructure strategy. It's something that's set up under new legislation so that there is a strategic approach to the delivery of infrastructure across Western Australia. It's going through a communication consultation phase. When that is completed, Infrastructure WA will complete and develop its infrastructure plan and provide that to Parliament. Then that sits on the Parliament table for a period of time and comment through that political process, and then it gets agreed by the Premier and voted on. So that's the process. It's not taking anything away in terms of that from local government or anything like that. In fact, arguably, what it is doing is providing some certainty about the strategic direction that infrastructure investment will be made, and I think importantly, the draft strategy is identifying that current infrastructure investment does not support many of the planning and local government initiatives, and is trying to align things up in a better way, and suggesting changes to funding and income sources to enable that to happen, particularly for the transport portfolio.
Councillor Ree.
Could I have a clarification, please, that if Development WA chooses to build 20-story apartments down at the beach?
Yeah, okay. Development WA isn't building apartments down the beach. Developers
That's
are.
an example. I did say such as, but if they did, then the City of Stirling wouldn't have any power to say no, would they?
This is nothing to do with this item. This is nothing to do with this item, though, Councillor Ray. This is Infrastructure WA. So this is about putting an infrastructure strategy over the state so that it takes politics out of the equation, over political cycles.
I do believe, Mr. Mayor, that's what the DAPs were supposed to do.
No, they weren't. They're not at all.
The DAPs were sitting there saying,
Councillor Ree,
It's the same thing.
No, it's nothing like it.
Well, I think it will end up being the same. Okay, let's phrase it the other way. I believe it will end up the same way. We will get more and more of what we can do diminish. If they choose to put an infrastructure project in our backyard, we will have less and less say in it. That is my point. That is the point I make, and when it looks at page 4 on page 182, item 4, social and affordable housing, the city homeless. I mean, is this saying that we are to build housing for the homeless, etc.?
No, it's not. It's not at all saying that.
This is what I'm saying. If we're not looking into the details of this, I'm concerned of where it will take us in 10, 20 years. And I think it should have more of a focus on what we're doing in local government. And yes, it's supposed to be overarching. And yes, it's supposed to be infrastructure. But when we look at what's happened to a lot of the projects, we're missing out at the bottom. And I personally believe that we are not writing like we should.
Thank you. So again, I'll just clarify. This isn't about planning outcomes in local governments. This is about a state infrastructure strategy. Councillors may put their independent. You are welcome to put your own submission into this paper.
Can I have that in writing, Mr. Mayor?
It's on record. You are welcome to put your own submission in, Councillor. Councillor Migdale. No. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Councillor Farrelly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually, maybe it's a generational thing, but I also am a bit concerned about the direction that this is a direction for state government for the next 20 years in their infrastructure builds and the way they are designing, planning, etc. And it can go from anything, as they say, from health to whatever. However, if we exclude a opportunity for community, which would be local government, I would hope, to be as equally in that picture, we will exclude the personal, what do you call it, the personal understanding.
Order, Mr. Mayor.
I think it's been said before, there's no powers getting taken away from anyone. This is about putting a strategy in place.
Yeah, but the strategies, but they refer, sorry, I don't think it really is a point of order, because this is a strategy looking at government departments and what they're going to progress to try and achieve, rather than have them all on their own little pathways, how they can achieve something, and they're looking for opinions on that. But I do think we have to be very clear about how things can change in a locality if we are not going to include the local government. Local government has been minimised. We know that with planning, and we know why the JDAPs came in, and we know what's happened since they've come in. And we actually understand why they were put there, because we were actually stagnating. And I do recall that, because I lived in an area that was definitely stagnating. To our detriment, though, we then have a progression forward that doesn't necessarily fit into a scheme unless you can have the local government involvement, which is happening. I do think that it would be great to have that local government come. It is part
Point
of
of
the
order,
development.
Mr. Mayor. This is not about JDAPs, and also I just want, again, clarification. This report is not taking away anything from the City of Stirling. In fact, it's actually trying to promote our position in coming to the discussion regarding issues about infrastructure in WA.
And I can completely confirm that you are right. It's really important, councillors, we don't complicate this by bringing in the planning and the JDAP. It's a very different system. This is about major infrastructure projects. So one of the best examples is right now MetroNet as a state government initiative, as a major infrastructure project for the state. If the government was to change, this is about protecting that, so it's a future direction of the next state government. So it doesn't matter whether it's a Greens or Liberal or Labor, they don't chop and change infrastructure projects, it becomes aligned. They're major infrastructure projects.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry I raised the JDAP. I was talking about things like MetroNet, like the train lines, etc. But at the moment, the local government is a player in all of those. If it doesn't come through as one of those, it's great that the local government is commenting on this, and the comments made, I really, I do thank them for the criticism they've put in the connectivity between some departments at date. But we have seen, in my 2 years here, have seen how sometimes state government departments seem to be running on different sort of ideas or different focuses. different strategic directions. And this is where you are, I think, is trying to get them all together and working in that. But I'd like to see local government also recognised for the value it puts in that. Because if you lose local government, you lose that locality, you lose that understanding of what happens. And the case in point is, you talk about infrastructure stopped. In Melbourne, they stopped that freeway infrastructure. They paid a huge amount of money to pay themselves out because what it was doing was dividing, it was like a huge thing through the centre of Melbourne into
Point of
the
order,
suburbs.
Mr Mayor.
What's your
We're
point of
not
order?
discussing Melbourne.
No,
That's all right. Yeah, I'm happy for you to continue,
Yeah, I'm
Councillor.
trying to put a point across. Sorry, Councillor. What I'm trying to put a point across is that when local government is considered, changes are made when we have these strategic plans without local government being considered. Thank you.
And your concerns are heard. I think it's, again, while you're talking, I think of another example that is strengthened by this position for local governments. So, for example, right now with coastal erosion, as a local government, the funding pockets are purely on political cycles and worth tens of thousands of dollars. The state infrastructure strategy would look at coastal erosion as a statewide issue and consult with all those local governments so there'd be appropriate funding so that we could access funding pools of millions of dollars. And that's what this is about. But again, all councillors are welcome to read through it and also put your own submissions in. All right, does anyone else want to debate this? If not, we'll go to Councillor Lagan to close debate.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and it's obviously an emotive topic. Your comment just reminded me that there's some suggestion around the table tonight that local government's getting sidelined. I sit on Wolga, the Mayor sits on Wolga, other elected members sit on Wolga. You have decision-making processes here, you have decision-making processes at Wolga, and you have numerous other opportunities as a community representative to make sure you represent your community, which is exactly what they elected you to do. So to stand up and suggest that the community is having less of a say is spurious. It's not factually true. The community might feel that they're not having enough of a say, but they're still having a say. There's nobody trying to lock community out. This item 13.2 is to endorse the proposed City of Stirling submission. If the community felt that we were going to lock them out, we wouldn't put a submission in. We'd let this fly on its own, and then maybe the community could come back to us and say, well, you did nothing about it. You had no say on it. That's not the case. This is a notice of motion to ensure that we do have a say in this process. In the conclusion, it stated that, as outlined and attached in one of this report, the draft submission is generally supportive of the overall intent of the strategy, as it will aid in ensuring that the future needs of the community are met. It is therefore recommended that Council endorse the draft submission. That's the intent of what this item is trying to do. Don't sell the council itself out suggesting that we're not representing the community, because we are representing the community. That's what elected members do. That's what many of our policies do. That's what this type of item is doing. I implore you to vote in favour of this item.
Thank you. And with that, that does close debate. So we'll move Councillor Lagan to second as Councillor Sandri. That motion is carried with Councillor Farrelly and Reid voting against, all other councillors voting for it. I have to note, councillors, by voting against it, you're basically saying you don't want the city to have a submission. That's okay. Okay, it was just item 14. Item 14, 14.1, notice of motion, Councillor Chris Hatton, proposed cycle path and freeway access, Antonio Scarfo Reserve, on page 196. Councillor Hatton, it's your motion.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, the motion I put forth is that the alternative motion, sorry, just got to, that the Mayor and Executive Officers consult with Main Roads WA on removing the proposed location for a new cycle path and freeway access on Antonio Scarfo Reserve in Stirling.
So that's your original?
That's the original motion.
Yep. Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Reid. Is there anyone opposed?
You're not going for the alternative? No.
This is a recommendation.
You don't. You're not going for that.
No, he's going for his original. He's asking myself and the executive officers to consult with Main Roads on removing the proposed location for the new cycle path and freeway access onto it. All right, so is there anyone opposed to this? If not, I will put... Sorry, Councillor Proud, you're opposed?
Well, I am, in as much as I'd like to foreshadow the alternative.
Thank you. So Councillor Hatton, your motion? Yes?
Okay, yeah, look, there's a community down where this, well, I'll just start on this, I'll give a bit of background. The local community acknowledges the desired cycle connectivity along the freeway throughout Perth, that is, and in this locality, and supports the building of a new PSP on the east side of the freeway between Erindale Road and Carronut Road. The local community acknowledges the PBN, which is the Perth Bicycle Network, and the local route long-term cycle network, LTCN. So it's all acknowledged that it's a good thing to do. What's happened is that Main Roads and the Department of Transport have created a project to create a missing link in the PSP network on the eastern side of Mitchell Freeway. There will be an underpass at Carronut Road and 3 connections over the short length of the PSP. 2 connections feed off the good straight wide roads, and a 3rd connection feeds off one road with a high usage T-junction and a recreational green space, public open space that hosts a variety of wildlife. All the new connections involve freeway wall openings to give access points, and at 3 points over less than 1 kilometre, as a matter of fact over 600 metres if I've measured properly, and 3 access points over 600 metres. And these routes and accesses are predominantly for the benefits of destination riders. And I want to make this point clear that there are 3 types of riders essentially, and they are riders of destination, getting from point A to B, recreational riders, and those who enjoy getting fit. That's health riders. The destinational riders are the fast riders, wanting to get from A to B as quickly as possible, usually for work purposes on timelines. Actually, the City of Stirling states in its report, which does not support my motion, states that the original planned path was not supported by the City of Stirling due to the potential increases and conflicts between fast-moving cyclists and pedestrians, which and wildlife and recreational activities occurring within the reserve. Yet the City of Stirling have supported a bicycle path through the reserve, and they've actually virtually admitted that their destination riders, they've actually used the word fast-moving cyclists. It just doesn't really seem the right thing to do, to be putting it through a park and causing an unsafe environment. So the local community is very concerned about why a bicycle path, an access point, is going to be put through this local reserve, a City of Stirling public asset, and when 2 other safer access points are less than 300 metres either side of this proposed access point. 3 access points within 600 metres. Why? Doesn't make sense. The reserve infrastructure build will not only be unsafe for many reasons, including cyclists navigating one high-use vehicular road with a busy T-junction, that is the road going through to the reserve. Take away the reserve, you've still got a road with a T-junction where it's the only road in and out of a 50-house complex. It's a high-use road with a high-use T-junction, the only road. Yet they want to put cyclists going fast down that road through the T-junction. There is also blinding sun from a sunrise, which I experience every day going to work through that one road. And in the evening, you've got the setting sun. Cyclists will not be seen. It will be very, very dangerous. It's very likely there will be a car and cyclist accident. Another reason to stop the cycle path and access being built is that many families, elderly people and children recreate at the park. And fast cyclists, as the City of Stirling has stated that they will be fast cyclists, will no doubt be unsafe. It's a recreational reserve that connects to 2 other parks with people ambling along, families, children and disabled people too. And yet another reason is the environment. Only last week I rescued a migrating tortoise, yes, that was crossing the green space right at the spot where a 7-metre a 3 metre wide concrete path is going to be built along 70 metres of green space, effectively knocking out maybe up to 1,000 square metres of green reserve with the animals migrating across there. I've actually got it on video, but I won't show it tonight. So, so is this access point, cycle path, well thought out?
30 seconds.
Don't think so. Thanks, Mr Mayor. The community does not think so, nor do I. It is not needed, just not needed. You've got two other access points either side, 300 metres. I've put this motion forward so that it can be maybe deferred and referred to a planning committee for further debate.
No, that's not
the other motion, but that is one of the things that I'd like the intent of it.
Yep,
it's just the intent of it.
Yep, but it's all right. It's all right.
Yeah,
so
well,
let's just clarify, Councillor Hatton. So that was, I know you were contemplating that, but the motion is to consult with Main Roads, not to have a workshop. Or
absolutely, the motion is that.
Yes, okay. And nice.
Unless I can foreshadow an alternative.
No, it's your motion.
It's worth trying.
No. And nice work with the tortoise thrown in as well. I thought that was good. That was nice effect. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. I'd just like to, if the movers are quite acceptable, that the Mayor and the Executive Officers consult with the Main Roads Department WA on removing the proposed location for a new cycle path and freeway access on Antonio Scarfo Reserve in Stirling, and the comments being brought back to Council. That way, then it comes back to Council for a decision.
There's no decision to be made, so I get what you're trying to do, but I don't...
Make a decision. You may make a decision as a Mayor and Executive Officer, but we don't know.
No, let's be very clear. This is a Main Roads freeway access cycleway. Councillor Hatton tonight has put a motion that requires a decision for us to go and do it. We will go and talk to Main Roads and take the Council's wishes to change it, to not have it. But there's no decision to be made if it came back. It's not our decision to make.
I believe the motion says consult on removing. It doesn't say that we're making this decision. It's saying that you consult on removing. It might be a play on words, but we here are approving this motion. So it says.
I know you're approving it tonight, but I'm saying why would you approve it tonight for us to go and say Main Roads, take that out, that's what our council wants, and then for us to bring it back for you to go, let's have a decision that, well done. Like, there's no decision to make. Well, it's not our cycleway.
We are making a decision because we're actually saying that you're to consult.
I know.
All right. Well, I'd just like to make the comment. I agree with it because I think consultation is important. And I think when you look at these bushes and the parks, etc., it's no different from the Bush Forever sites, which were legislated, which are often changed by state government, which were part of infrastructure projects, and I could go on, but I won't. I just think that if you look at page 199, the city is aware that the residents of 4 properties directly abutting the reserve between houses 40 and 46 were not supportive. Not. Also, on page 200, that the project was mainly managed by Main Roads, as they've been responsible for the consultation with affected members of the community. Could you please advise me why Main Roads took that directly with those community members, please, only, without the city?
Mr. Gumoff?
Through the Chair, the consultation was undertaken by Main Roads because it was largely, well, almost entirely their project. They were consulting on the PSP as a whole. They weren't consulting on each specific connection. So they consulted with the abutting residents as a whole, and within that consultation, they asked us for contact details of our residents, which we provided to them, and then they distributed the consultation. But it wasn't the city's place to consult on a project that we had no control over at that stage. And that's why Main Roads did all the consultation.
So this is in line with the state government's bicycle strategy, is that not correct, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Gumoff?
Through the Chair, yes, it's part of the long-term cycle network. And, well, if you recall, if you indulge me, if you recall when we did discuss the long-term cycle network, we did indicate that we sought council endorsement of that long-term cycle network. But if we decided that we wanted to change local routes or secondary routes, that we could still do that. So yes, it's part of the overall strategy. But if council deemed that we wanted to change, that it wanted to change a route, it can do so.
Councillor Reid.
So this was a long-term infrastructure project of the state government, which I believe was $39 million. Was that not correct, to do the whole bicycle park? Or something like that, $39 million to build the bicycle parks? A big infrastructure project, if I recall.
Mr. Guillemot.
Through the chair, I'm not sure of the dollar value, but yes, it's part of the long-term upgrades for the PSP network, both north and south.
Councillor Reid.
Example of an infrastructure project where we can change in little bits and pieces. I'm concerned when I look at Moreland Road, which what happened there with the bicycle project.
No, this is completely different, Councillor.
It is still the same in the sense that when the community didn't understand the bigger picture, when it came to the local area, yes, a lot of it was out of our control, but part of it, when it came to actually putting it into place, it's not what the community said. And
So Councillor, I just have to stop you just for a sec. You seconded this motion and you're almost debating against it. All right? You're debating against the long-term cycle network strategy. Councillor Hatton's intent of this motion, if I read it right, is not to change the strategy. It's not to not have a PSP along there. It's just to move the location of it to align with ours, a couple of metres across. So let's just keep it in perspective. It's nothing to do with bicycle strategies or Moreland Bicycle Boulevard. Let's go back to this and support your motion that you've seconded.
if I can finish.
You can.
Thank you. The whole idea of these cycle strategies is for a reason, and the importance of the people that live near them is also a reason why we should encourage them. If we want people to use the recreational activities to the best of our ability and to the best of their ability to keep them active, make sure the environment is contained, this is a really good example of why we need to support this motion, because that's what it actually says. And this is what people aren't looking at. I think Councillor Hatton's idea is actually
Councillor, I have to stop you
good.
again. This isn't changing anything to do with people using cycleways. The people using this cycleway, the commuters, will use it whether it's here or a couple of metres across. This is about protecting the amenity of the people backing onto this.
I believe that the alternative motion by the staff was that the city retains the proposed connection from Mitchell Freeway Principal Shared Path to St Anthony's Drive via the reserve. So therefore, I'm speaking in support of this motion and not with the officer's motion. That is why I'm saying that, and that is what the community is saying, and that in the overall picture is what we want to do. I don't think that's hard.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know what that was about. Councillor Proud, you're opposed.
Well, I am. I'm not sure how a PSP is going to affect any one of the recreational users on the reserve. There's a complete path that goes all the way around Antonio Scarfo Reserve, and it is really quite separate, and it's dedicated, and all it is a spur that comes off the PSP that goes along the freeway. I don't understand the value of removing it. It doesn't say relocate it anywhere, it says removing it. Hence, I think it should stay.
Councillor Thornton has indicated.
Yeah, I've just been looking at the Perth cycling map.
Councillors, please.
And it looks like that the reason why this cycleway is being extended is because of Amelia Street being recognised as a significant cycle path route. So I think that's why this is being considered. And just looking at the map, I don't know if there's going to be another route that we can choose that might be just as beneficial as the Amelia Street route.
Thank you. Is there any other Councillor Caddy?
And I'd just like to seek some clarifications. Further to that, what are the alternatives? If we actually go and talk to Main Roads, where else are we proposing that we would put this cycle path? Because I'm looking at the map that's been provided in our report on 202. It looks like that going down the side of the park is pretty much the only option. So, I mean, what were we hoping to achieve by this? Can I just get some clarification on that,
Mr.
please?
Guillemot?
Yeah, through the chair, the connection through St Anthony from Amelia. Basically, we needed as part of the long-term cycle network, we needed an east-west connection from the bike lanes on Amelia Street to get to the PSP. The route that we chose to do that was the quickest route, which is the continuation of Amelia Street west along St Anthony and through Antonio Scarfo Reserve. So that was the reason why this particular, I guess, section of the route was chosen. If that connection to the PSP is removed from Antonio Scarfo Reserve, we will need to reroute the local route, either north Odin Drive and then west along Bryan Place. So you'll be forcing, Councillor Hatton raised concerns about cyclists on St Anthony because it was a busy road. Well, we'd be forcing the cyclists to use Odin Drive, which is a much busier route, or they'd have to come south on Odin Drive and along Orr Place to Zarinsky Court. So there needs to be a designated connection between Amelia Street local route and the PSP. As I said, Antonio Scarfo is the most direct and is the lowest trafficked route, and that's the reason why we chose it.
Yeah, thank you. And look, one of the difficult jobs we've got as council is balancing up competing interests. But as a council, we've made a commitment to trying to promote active transport modes, of which cycling is one. And so building cycling infrastructure is the only way we're going to get people out of their cars and onto their bikes, and all of the health and congestion benefits that brings. It is proven, and I spent some time in Holland working with the engineers over there about building cycling networks. It has been proven that cycling networks have to have direct routes for people to be wanting to use them. So, we need to be thinking about creating good amenity for our cyclists if we want to build our cycling community. I understand that therefore we've got, some trade-offs we need to make around parks, but I understand that it's going on the periphery of the park, Mr. Guillemot. It's not through the middle of the park.
That's correct, yes. And that's, sorry, to answer a question that hasn't been asked. That's the specific reason why we asked for a route that was separate to the path route, so that there was a differentiation between path users and commuter cyclists.
Yeah, and look, that is incredibly important. We see in the coastal ward the problems that you get when you've got pedestrians and commuter cyclists trying to coexist on a shared path, and we know the hazards that's caused and the number of bollards we've had to put in to try and curb those problems. So, look, absolutely separation I think is important. I really, I sympathise with the councillor and wanting to represent the community here, but I really don't see a good option here. And I think we have to balance up the needs of the locals that live in the vicinity with the needs of the locals who want to be able to use cycleways to access destinations around the city. So I will be supporting the alt-rec, not the proposed recommendation tonight.
Councillor Farrelly?
Well, I do agree with Councillor Caddy about the pathways around the coastal ward. We also have a designated bicycle route, which I hardly ever see a bicycle on, but I can tell you that I did ride up there one day.
Let's get to this one, hey?
Yeah, I know. So the local content is very important. That's really what I want to say. And I look to my ward councillors in other wards as people who know what is really the way the locals are going to use things, impact on the locals. I think it was removing the proposed location for a new cycle path. It wasn't proposing to get rid of it, and I understand there's a number of locations that could be chosen, and I think just look into it, because we have got a concern here. We need to look at it again, address that concern. Can we move it to one of the other two locations? I really do think we need to do that first before we make a decision to go back to the alternative recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sandri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been a lot of discussion about this, and I don't think it's something that, I don't think there's enough here to give you certainty on what the alternative is when you go and consult Main Roads. We need a consolidated suggestion moving forward. So can I please move a procedural motion to defer the item to a future Planning and Development Committee meeting following a workshop with councillors?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask, is this time sensitive in any way?
You can't debate a procedural, but I will. Let's get some clarification. Is there any time sensitivity on this in terms of how that could work, Mr. Guillemot?
Main Roads aren't at the shovel-ready stage, so it's not like they're holding off the project pending this connection. But they have actually approached or reached the 100% design stage, so it will be fairly soon that they will commence construction.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to remove the workshop element, but that it be deferred to the next Planning and Development Committee meeting so that we can obtain further information on alternative options.
CRC.
CRC.
Yeah, that's done. So we've got a second to Councillor Perkoff. Look, I think the intent's clear, and we take the intent. We're happy to start conversation with Main Roads in the meantime to say don't start digging. Yeah. No. I think Mr. Guillemot. I don't. Yeah.
Sorry, just to provide councillors, I guess, some certainty about there is two alternative routes. One, if we wanted to get from Mealy Street to the PSP and there's no connection via Antonio Scarfo Reserve, you either have to go north Odin and along Bryan, because Bryan Place is where the other connection is, or you have to go south on Odin and then the east-west connection on Orr Place. Of those two, there's, I guess, a misunderstanding that we haven't considered those two options. We have. The Antonio Scarfo one is still what we believe is to be the safest, but if council makes the decision that Antonio Scarfo Reserve connection is not suitable, the next suitable one is south on Odin and via Orr Place, because that's where the lower volume is, and that's the most direct connection. So with respect, it probably doesn't need another Community and Resources Committee meeting, or I'm probably trying to save myself some work here, but
sorry,
that's
through
probably
there, and with all due respect, if I can't debate it, it's a bit unfair for the officers to be able to provide context to it. That's just my opinion on this matter. And I'm just, that's... Yeah.
No, sure, but I think, in fairness, Mr. Guillemot is trying to help with the, in terms of urgency and what we need to look at. So Mr. Littleton's provided some comment in terms of time sensitivity and what might be more appropriate.
Yeah, look, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, notwithstanding the fact that
councillors, can we just
have done review, I appreciate that the council are looking for some further time to consider the matter. If that's true, obviously it is open for council to consider a procedural motion. I would suggest that it be deferred. Obviously not to the next CRC meeting, but to the one subsequent to that, which will be November. In the meantime, we'll contact, and Mr. Kahimov's now glaring at me, but we'll contact Main Roads and we will discuss with them how we can move forward with obviously the fact that we need to create a PSP connection somewhere. So that will be something that we'll need to contact Main Roads about.
I'm just, sorry, I'm listening to all the advice, but I'm also hearing the intent and the fact that this is now 9th of November, which is a long way away. So I'm just seeking clarification whether it can just be deferred to a future meeting. Just a future meeting, and before November or before the end of November or something. I'm just trying to give it, if the flexibility means that it can be dealt with sooner, you don't want to wait till, I'm guessing.
Mr Mayor, can we just put a procedural to defer to a future council meeting in October? That can be, there's no reason
That
why
way
it
gives
can't
us
be
a
on a
couple.
P&D, a CRC or OCM.
Sure, that's clear. Good. It's already seconded, Councillor Perkoff. We'll put that as a procedural. And that motion is carried with Councillor Caddy and Proud voting, Councillor Caddy and Proud voting against. So it will be deferred. Mr Guillemot saved himself a workshop. Well done. We'll now skip item 15 as there are no notice of motions during caretaker. We'll move on to item 16, questions by members of which due notice has been given. There are nil. 17, new business of an urgent nature, of nil. Item 18, matters behind closed doors, I have nil. That brings us to closure of the meeting, item 19, and I declare the meeting closed at 9:51 p.m. Thanks everyone for your attendance, and goodbye to those viewers.